Chapter 4:14. The wheels opened a path, and the dragons on both sides retreated. In an instant, Yi Kanshing really did carve out a path for Sumo and Yuwuji. However, neither of them chose to charge forward. "You guys go first." Yuwuji formed a seal with both hands. Looking at the fog again, endless white light lit up in an instant. The white light was as sharp as a blade, but it suddenly spread outwards. Chi-chi, chi-chi, the light took form, then turned into a rain of swords. Bang bang, dozens of dragons were hit by the white light. The white light penetrated 3 to 4 feet deep into the dragon's skin, then suddenly exploded. In an instant, the flesh and blood of the dragons flew everywhere, howling endlessly. It was a type of indiscriminate attack. The two divinities unleashed their ultimate moves at the same time. The dragon tide finally slowed down. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the 3 tide-breaking boats charged forward for another 10 miles. In another 10 miles they would reach the other side. Sumo had already raised her hand. As long as she patted her storage pouch, the puppets would fly out. In the current situation, there was no need for other puppets. The appearance of the ghostly shadow would solve all problems. Undead Realm Great Perfection stage was in existence that could sweep away almost everything here. However, at this moment, in the depths of the dragon-trapping abyss, in the mist, a sudden explosion resounded. Boom! The mist billowed like the moving clouds. The earth quaked, the mountains shook, the valley echoed. What exactly happened in the depths of the dragon-trapping abyss? Roar, roar! A dragon's roar shook the 9 heavens. That dragon's roar far surpassed the roars of the other dragons. All the evil dragons in the dragon tide froze. At this moment, almost all the cultivators in the dragon-trapping abyss also heard that dragon's roar. King! That was the roar and call of the Dragon King. That roar caused all the 9 nether cultivators' expressions to change. Dragon King! That was a legendary existence. A god-bearing realm spirit beast. However, the Dragon King was said to be hiding in the depths of the dragon-trapping abyss, not moving for tens of thousands of years. Why would it roar at the sky today? Once the Dragon King was alarmed, none of the cultivators in the dragon-trapping abyss would be able to escape. Yi Sanqing's expression also changed. Sumo's pupils shrank. If the evil Dragon King really came out, then he would have to fight to the death. After all, it was a god-bearing level spirit beast. However, the evil Dragon King did not make another sound after that. No one knew what it meant. Looking again, the evil dragons that had originally surrounded Sumo and the others turned around and ran straight into the depths of the fog. Yi Kanshing was stunned. Yuwuji didn't expect this either. Sumo was also a little confused. He gently put down his hand and smiled bitterly. Maybe their mother is calling them home for dinner. Yi Kanshing was speechless. Yuwuji chuckled. Let's go, Yi Kanshing said. Then, the 3 tide-breaking boats shot toward the opposite shore like arrows. There were only a few dozen li left on the final journey. Without any obstacles, they arrived almost instantly. The tide-breaking boat finally landed in the second layer. Sumo and the others let out sighs of relief. Not far away, several cultivators flew out at the same time. Their expressions were also quite disheveled. They were a few deity tribulation cultivators. It seemed they had also encountered a dragon tide, or else they wouldn't be in such a state. The dragon roar just now had saved many cultivators. Yi Kanshing brought Sumo and Yuwuji to a large rock and adjusted their breathing. Sumo didn't expend much energy just now, but Yi Kanshing and Yuwuji had expended a lot of energy. The two of them meditated while Sumo was in charge of guarding them. An hour later, the blood on Yi Sanqing's body had been dried by her spirit energy. Yuwuji's white sand also gradually lost its color and returned to its original appearance. Then, it was slowly returned to Yuwuji's palm. That scene was quite shocking to Sumo. Yuwuji's white sand was not stored in a storage bag or some kind of magical item, but hidden in his body. That was really incredible. At this moment, Yi Kanshing took out the map and glanced at it. Let's go according to the marked place on the map first. 100 li away there is a Mount Yiling. It is said that there are many rare treasures and spirit beasts in the mountain, and it is relatively safe. Let's go and have a look first, and also explore the second layer. What do you think? Sumo and Yuwuji nodded. So, the three of them rode the wind and went straight to the Mount Yiling 100 li away. At this moment, in the depths of the mist of the dragon coiling abyss, the old man in white camel, was walking slowly with his body hunched. There was no magical item under his feet, but he walked on the tide as if he was walking on flat ground. And behind him, there was a giant dragon. That dragon was 100 zhang long, covered with golden scales and dazzling brilliance. It was completely different from the ordinary evil dragons because it was a king. However, at that moment the Dragon King was like a tiny insect. In the fog, it was almost crawling forward. It drooped its head, lowered its whiskers, and carefully glanced at the old man in white from time to time. How was this a king? It was obviously an earthworm. But alas, there were hundreds of little worms following behind the king. All of them were crawling forward at a uniform speed. They were all evil dragons of the dragon-trapping abyss. There was no other way. Even the Dragon King, who didn't come out for 10,000 years, followed obediently. The other little dragons, who dared to be rash. Such a scene, if other 9 nether cultivators saw it, their jaws would probably drop. This was too shocking. What was the cultivation of that old man in white? At this moment, the white camel looked calm and at ease. The passage that the white camel was walking on seemed to be completely isolated. The other 9 nether cultivators could not see through the fog and see this scene. With a hunched body, walking slowly, the white camel finally reached the other side. The evil Dragon King's eyes were filled with anticipation. It hoped that the old man in white would leave soon. At this moment, the white camel stopped and turned around. Seeing this, the Dragon King hurriedly lowered its head. Lord Dragon, you don't have to send us off anymore. Behave yourself in the future. When the 3 boats come back, they must be unimpeded. Understand? The white camel's voice was slightly low. The Dragon King nodded repeatedly. If there is any mistake, I will skin you, pull out your tendons, and destroy your entire clan. The Dragon King lowered its head even more in fear. But it did not hear the old man in white speak again. When it quietly raised its head to take a peek, it discovered that the white-clothed, hunchbacked old man had long since disappeared. Roar! The Dragon King slowly straightened its body and let out a muffled roar. Then, it suddenly turned around, opened its giant mouth, and directly swallowed a gray evil dragon behind it. The entire group of dragons was trembling. The evil Dragon King's heart was full of frustration and anger. But the old man's methods were too powerful. It did not dare to act up in front of him. Mount Yiling was at the edge of the second stage of the ancient coin realm. But it was definitely a spirit mountain. The mountain was not tall, only a few 100 feet tall, but it was surrounded by purple mist and dense mist. It could be said that this was the inevitable choice for the cultivators of the netherworld to enter the second stage of the ancient coin realm. Because there were many spirit herbs and divine medicines growing on this mountain, but not many evil beasts. The spirit beasts were relatively docile. Yi Kanshing, Sumo, and Yuwuji went straight to Mount Yiling. But they stopped a few miles away from Mount Yiling. Yi Kanshing and Yuwuji looked at each other. Because there was a strong smell of blood coming from Mount Yiling. Of course, Sumo sensed it too. So he patted his storage bag and the little white pig jumped out, then turned into a white light and went straight to Mount Yiling. Chapter 4:15 Dracophant Soul-Devouring Beast. Yi Kanshing and Yuwuji were slightly stunned. They did not expect Sumo to have such a spirit beast. That was the legendary 3 great divine beasts of the Pure Land. Although it was a cub, it was already rare enough. Brother Su, you actually have such a powerful little fellow? Yi Kanshing laughed. I got it by chance. Sumo did not explain further. Just now, it was all thanks to the two of you protecting me. Now, it's time for me to do my best. There seems to be something strange outside of Mount Yiling. After the battle just now, the relationship between the three of them had become much closer. With that, the three of them sped up and arrived outside of Mount Yiling in a moment. Humph! At this moment, the little white pig was hovering in the air, looking at the corpses scattered outside of Mount Yiling. There were a total of 7 corpses, 5 men and 2 women, all of them cultivators in black. 3 of them had perfected soul transformation realm, and 4 of them were mid-stage deity tribulation realm. This should be considered a considerable force to enter the arcane realm. The little white pig swooped down, picked up a small black token with its mouth, and sent it to Sumo's hand. On the token, there were 5 ancient words, "Undead of 9 Nether." Sumo frowned. This was exactly the same as the token on the 3 cultivators in black who came to kill her. Yi Kanxing and Yu Wuji naturally saw it as well. The undead. Yi Kanxing sneered. The slaughter between the 9 underworld's cultivators has begun just like that? Brother Yi, you also know about the matter between the undead and the guiltless faction? Sumo asked. In 9 Nether, it's considered an open secret. Who doesn't know? Every time the tide starts, it's actually a slaughter. Yi Kanxing said, then turned to look at Yu Wuji with a faint smile. Miss Yu, which faction are you leaning towards? Brother Yi, don't you want to leave 9 Nether? Yu Wuji asked Yi Kanxing. Yi Kanxing didn't expect that Yu Wuji would be so direct. He couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment. Then, he said with a smile, how can the Netherworld realm compare to the Milky Way? Yi Kanxing's words made Sumo's heart tremble. Yu Wuji laughed, so, of course, I hope that the sinless faction succeeds. Brother Yi, I'm afraid it's the same, right? The 9 underworlds is a cage. Yi Kanxing looked at Sumo. One day, when we break through the 9 Nether, we will be able to know more and understand more. The descendants of the 3 realms do not belong to any faction, but at critical moments we should make our own choices. His words were filled with deep meaning. Hearing this, Sumo could only nod slightly. His understanding of the 9 Nethers was mainly from Li Beihan's introduction. However, from the looks of it, the situation in the 9 Hells might be even more complicated than Li Beihan had said. Yi Kanxing and Yu Wuji might not belong to any faction, but they supported the sinless faction in their hearts, because they both had the dream of the 3 realms. Actually, Sumo also had it, but his memory hadn't recovered completely. He still didn't know what had happened after the battle in the Brahma Temple. Would there be other reincarnators of the 3 realms in the vast 9 underworlds? What kind of power was behind the sinless faction? Various thoughts swirled in his heart. Although Sumo had some thoughts in his heart, he didn't show it on his face. Humph! At this moment, the little white pig snorted at Mount Yiling. It was hinting that there were still people on the mountain. Sure enough, Sumo and the others raised their heads to look. They saw 3 figures suddenly rushing up from the top of Mount Yiling. A black-clothed cultivator against 2 gray-clothed devil-masked men. All 3 of them were at the peak of the deity tribulation realm. At this moment, the black-clothed cultivator couldn't hold on for much longer. His body was full of bloodstains. Ink Soul Tower. Sumo frowned. Brother Su, you've dealt with the Ink Soul Tower before? Yi Kanxing asked. Ha ha! Sumo sneered. I've dealt with them before. They once sent people to kill me. Unfortunately, they didn't succeed. Yi Kanxing glanced at Sumo with admiration. There aren't many people in the 9 underworlds who can escape from the Ink Soul Tower. If I'm not wrong, these 7 undead must have been killed by the people of the Ink Soul Tower. Ink Soul Tower, for the sake of business, they really stop at nothing. Yu Wuji sneered. Sooner or later, they'll lose their value. No matter if it's the undead or the sinless faction, they'll find them to settle the score. Ha ha! Yi Kanxing sneered. Obviously, he agreed with Yu Wuji's words. And at this time, the black-robed cultivators were already showing signs of defeat. Yi Kanxing and Yu Wuji glanced at each other. Whoosh, the two of them seemed to have a tacit understanding and attacked at almost the same time. Yi Sanqing's sword directly pierced through the immortal heart of one of the gray-robed cultivators. Yu Wuji's white sand directly wrapped the other gray-robed cultivator within. The white sand instantly began to compress. Yi Kanxing was at the late stage of the deity tribulation realm, while Yu Wuji was at the great circle of the deity tribulation realm. It was naturally easy for them to sneak attack two late-stage deity tribulation realm cultivators who had already consumed a lot of energy and were fighting. In fact, this kind of situation where the sandpiper and the clam fought and the fisherman reaped the benefits often happened in the ancient coin mystic realm. They just happened to be here. Sumo was slightly stunned at first, but then the corners of her mouth curled up. Sumo would absolutely not reject this kind of killing and robbing, reaping the benefits without doing anything. To become a king who didn't step on white bones. In the immortal cave at the graceful cliff, wasn't the Xiao Luo in Mu Jinghong's painting stepping on endless white bones? Sumo didn't reject killing people. In fact, he even felt a kind of pleasure after killing people. Besides, the black-robed cultivators were still alive, so what was the harm in killing them? Yi Kanxing was right. How could the netherworld realm be as bright as the galaxy? And this sentence was slowly being transformed into another voice in the depths of Sumo's soul. How could the Izong world be as bright as the galaxy? Sumo still didn't know why the three realms were destroyed, but judging from the attitude of Yi Kanxing and Yu Wuji, it might have something to do with the Izong world. Of course, all of this was just Sumo's momentary thought. And just as he was about to make his move, the little white pig had already made his move. Humph! The little white pig sensed Sumo's killing intent. Huff! The black-robed undead was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and couldn't escape from the little white pig, whose battle prowess was comparable to an undying realm expert. Its white fangs directly pierced through the immortal heart of the black-robed cultivator. Roar! The little white pig growled, and black energy curled around its fangs. The soul energy of the black-robed cultivator was instantly absorbed by the little white pig, turning him into a dried corpse. Sumo and the other two acted at the same time, instantly taking care of everything. Yi Kanxing and Yu Wuji waved their hands and directly split open the masks of the Black Spirit Pavilion's cultivators. However, they didn't recognize either of the two cultivators. Immediately, the storage bags of the two assassins of Black Spirit Pavilion became empty. Sumo also took out the storage bag of the undead. Yi Kanxing broke open the storage bags of the three late-stage deity tribulation realm experts. The storage bags of the three late-stage deity tribulation realm experts could be considered to have some things. Most likely, the things of the dead cultivators were also inside, but there wasn't anything special. According to the original agreement, the three of them should split the loot 50, 30, 20. However, at this time, Yu Wuji suggested that the three of them should split the loot equally, because she could already see that none of them were simple. A cultivator with an undying realm spirit beast's battle prowess was definitely not at the early stage soul transformation realm, and Yi Sanqing's battle prowess was probably not lower than hers. Yi Kanxing and Sumo both nodded and smiled, not objecting. The three of them didn't really care about this. This way, things would be easier to handle. The little white pig didn't stop. It lifted its nose and absorbed all the soul energy of those cultivators, then opened its mouth and directly breathed out raging fire, burning the corpses to destroy the evidence. However, at this time, there was an inexplicable murderous aura coming from the surroundings of Mount Yiling. The murderous aura surged like waves, surrounding the mountain. Chapter 4:16. The murderous aura spread like a tide. Sumo, Yi Kanxing, and Yu Wuji were startled. Mount Yiling was only at the edge of the second stage. How could it have such a strong murderous aura? Let's go. Yi Kanshing said. The murderous aura was strange, but it seemed like it was going to surround the mountain. The three of them naturally did not want to be trapped in the mountain. At this moment, dark clouds had already appeared in the void. They were real clouds, but they came in a strange way, as if someone was splashing ink in the sky. They appeared in an instant without any warning. The three of them and the pig soared into the sky and charged out of the mountain. However, as soon as they took flight, they attracted the change in the cloud. Crack, boom, several bolts of lightning struck at them from the sky. The lightning was like a knife, with a hint of blood. Tribulation lightning? The three of them were startled. That was tribulation lightning? Could it be that some kind of spirit beast was undergoing tribulation on Mount Yiling? And they happened to be here. This was not good news. Mortal tribulation. It was a tribulation that would only appear in a hidden world. As the name suggested, it was a tribulation that would only appear when a cultivator stepped into the second stage of the immortal realm. Someone stepped into the god-burying realm from the undead realm? Yuwuji frowned. They chose to undergo tribulation in the ancient coin arcane realm? That's a bit. The highest level of 9 Serenities cultivators who could enter the ancient coin arcane realm was the undead realm. However, they would have already entered the first stage of the ancient coin arcane realm. Who would undergo tribulation in the second stage of Mount Yiling? Moreover, once they successfully passed the tribulation and became a god-burying realm cultivator, they would immediately be transported out. Why bother? Undergoing tribulation here was more or less not worth it. If they wanted to undergo tribulation, they would not enter the ancient coin arcane realm. It's not a cultivator, it should be a spirit beast. Sumo frowned. There is an undead realm spirit beast inside Mount Yiling. Humph. The little white pig hummed and nodded. Its perceptive ability was even better than Sumo's. Boom, bang, at the same time, the three of them cast their own spells to resist the tribulation lightning. Fortunately, those were only the first few bolts of tribulation lightning, so they weren't very overbearing. Most importantly, none of them were tribulation transcenders. As long as they did not interfere with the tribulation lightning would not find them. A spirit beast has been born on Mount Yiling, Yi Kanshing said. At the same time, his soul inexplicably shook. It was a wonderful feeling. We can't get out. Sumo looked at the sky. At this moment, dark clouds covered the sky, and a faint blood-red light could be seen. The area around Mount Yiling was shrouded. That was the mortal tribulation thunder, an existence that could kill undead realm experts. Even if Sumo had the confidence to break out, there was no need for her to do so. The target of the tribulation lightning wasn't them. As long as they didn't force their way through and didn't destroy this tribulation, they would be able to survive. In theory, they would be safe. They could wait for everything to pass before making their plans. Thus, the three of them landed in the void and looked up at a colonel. The little white pig landed on Sumo's shoulder excitedly. Thunder rumbled in the void, but in the eyes of the little white pig, it was like a New Year's salute. It could sense that there was a big guy stirring in the depths of Mount Yiling. As a divine beast, Little White felt the same, so it was extremely excited. Tribulation transcendence was such a fun thing. The little white pig hoped that its mortal tribulation would come sooner. Everything in the void was getting more and more intense. Dark clouds rolled, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. Everything was almost ready. Sumo and the other two tried to withdraw their divine senses to avoid being accidentally injured by the tribulation lightning. The tribulation lightning was divided into 9 stages. The 9th stage of tribulation lightning could kill a undead realm expert. They naturally had to be careful. At this moment, Sumo and the others were very curious about what kind of spirit beast was undergoing tribulation. At the same time, outside of Mount Yiling, there were actually many cultivators watching. The tribulation on Mount Yiling this time attracted many 9 nether cultivators. White Camel, who was dressed in white, stood in an inconspicuous corner, squinting at everything. He was an old man in the early stage of deity tribulation, so almost no one paid attention to him. The opening of the tide this time seems a little different. There's actually a spirit beast undergoing tribulation? White Camel muttered to himself, then he looked up at the sky. What was reflected in his eyes was not the thick dark clouds, but a white light. White Camel seemed to be able to see through the layers of tribulation cloud. Tianfu City, how is it going? White Camel asked in his heart. Boom, crack, boom, thunder rumbled. The first stage of tribulation lightning had already begun to fall. The bolts of tribulation lightning, with a faint red glow, fell from the sky like swords and sabers. They were all concentrated on the depths of Mount Yiling. Aolo, quack, squeak, swoosh. There were hundreds of beasts and birds on Mount Yiling. At this time, they were all using their abilities to escape, so as not to be affected. This benefited some of the cultivators who were still on Mount Yiling. Apart from Sumo's group of 3, there were other cultivators on Mount Yiling. Along the way, many spirit beasts and birds were also captured by them. Sumo, Yi Kanshing, and Yuwuji basically didn't make any big movements. However, Little White Pig took the opportunity to get a lot of food. The little fellow didn't avoid meat or vegetables, and ate almost everything it could eat. For a moment, no spirit beasts escaped from Sumo's group. Boom, boom. The first stage of tribulation lightning exploded in the depths of Mount Yiling, causing the earth to tremble slightly. However, apart from the tribulation lightning and the various fleeing beasts, there were no other unusual movements. In other words, the spirit beast that was undergoing tribulation almost effortlessly endured the first stage of tribulation lightning. Sumo and the others weren't surprised by this situation. There were 9 stages of tribulation lightning, and the power of each stage was doubled. If the one undergoing tribulation couldn't handle the first stage of tribulation lightning as if it was light, then what was the point of passing the tribulation? Boom, crackle, boom, in the void electric arcs flashed as if lightning was constantly merging in the void. Boom, the second stage of tribulation lightning fell. Compared to the first, it was blood-red in color, and more concentrated. The electric arcs flashed, illuminating the entire Mount Yiling. However, there was still no movement in the depths of Mount Yiling. The lightning bolts were scattered after they struck. However, no one could see clearly what was undergoing tribulation. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th stages of tribulation lightning fell in succession. Each one was faster, stronger, and more powerful than the first. The 5th stage of tribulation lightning had completely turned blood-red. In the void, red clouds surged like waves of blood. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, as if the heavens were punishing it. Boom, crack. The 6th stage of tribulation lightning had transformed into a great river that poured down in torrents. At this time, whether it was inside or outside the mountain, all the cultivators held their breath and stared intently. They understood that this tribulation had reached a critical juncture. The first 5 stages of tribulation lightning were easily resolved by the one undergoing tribulation. This 6th stage of tribulation lightning contained endless undying chi. 3 of such lightning bolts were enough to kill an early undying cultivator. Boom, crack, bang. In the depths of Mount Yiling, a mountain gate was directly split open by the tribulation lightning. Half of the mountain peak collapsed. Roar. Finally, a dull roar came from the depths of the mountain. That roar sounded like a dragon but not a dragon, like a beast but not a beast. Sumo and Yi Wuji were calm, but Yi Sanqing's expression slightly changed. Chapter 4:17. Roar. Only after 6 waves of tribulation lightning did the object of the tribulation finally respond. That low growl sounded a little lazy, and even a little grumbling. It was as if the tribulation lightning had disturbed its sweet dreams. Roar. Following this growl, a beam of black profound light rose from the depths of the valley. The black light rushed toward the layers of tribulation clouds in the sky. Counterattack. This was something that the spectating cultivators did not expect. Under normal circumstances, it would be impressive if one could withstand 9 waves of tribulation lightning. Few cultivators or spiritual creatures could fight back against the tribulation cloud. However, it was obvious that the creature that was undergoing tribulation today was an extremely domineering existence. The tribulation lightning had disturbed its sweet dreams. Of course, it was going to disperse the tribulation lightning. Rumble. The black light that rushed upward collided with the 7th wave of tribulation lightning that was about to descend. In an instant, the two forces collided and formed a ring in the sky that spread outward. Red and black each occupied half of the world. They were almost evenly matched. The 7th wave of tribulation lightning was dispersed by the creature that was undergoing tribulation. However, it did not move the tribulation clouds in the sky. Even so, the cultivators inside and outside Mount Yiling were extremely shocked. That was because many cultivators who were undergoing tribulation would already show signs of defeat when they faced the 7th wave of tribulation lightning. Roar! The spirit beast on Mount Yiling roared. However, this time, it was not a grunt, but a low growl. Just now, his ultimate move had actually been ineffective. The spirit beast was a little annoyed. The tribulation clouds in the sky were pressing down layer by layer. That feeling was indeed unpleasant. What a powerful spirit beast! Yuwuji said. Humph, humph. The little white pig nodded excitedly when it heard what Yuwuji said. At the same time, it roared toward the depths of Mount Yiling. She looked so adorable that it was obvious that she was cheering them on. It did not mind if things got out of hand. Could it be that the one undergoing tribulation this time is also a pig? Sumo smiled bitterly to herself. It seems that the spirit beast that is undergoing tribulation has made the little white pig very happy. At this moment, Yi Sanqing's expression became even more solemn, because the feeling in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. Roar, roar! The spirit beasts in the deep mountains roared incessantly. The whole of Mount Yiling was buzzing with echoes. High up in the sky, the 8th wave of tribulation lightning did not immediately descend. The wind and clouds surged and gradually changed color. The lightning in the void had already drawn a purple arc. The entire void began to glow with purple light. The 8th wave of tribulation lightning had undergone a qualitative change. Chi-chi, chi-chi in the void, purple arcs of lightning shuttled back and forth like purple dragons. The purple dragons were gathering at the top of Mount Yiling. The purple dragons connected with each other and gradually fused together. Woo! High up in the sky, an incomparably large purple lightning dragon was finally formed. The dragon was vivid and lifelike, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it circled high in the sky. Calamity Dragon. The cultivators inside and outside Mount Yiling were shocked, because according to the legends, this was a situation that would only appear in the 9th wave of tribulation lightning. It seemed that the spirit beast that was undergoing tribulation today had angered heaven and earth, otherwise the Calamity Dragon wouldn't have appeared in the 8th wave. Woo roar! The purple Calamity Dragon circled high in the sky and roared like a real dragon. What a powerful tribulation lightning! Sumo thought. The soul burial realm was equivalent to the arcane immortal realm in the 3 realms. Going from a true immortal to an arcane immortal was a huge leap. How could a tribulation lightning that could kill a true immortal be ordinary? The Xiao Luo in Sumo's memory was only a cultivator of the 3 realms water tribulation. Back then, if she didn't use treasures like the demon bell, she definitely wouldn't have been able to withstand the tribulation lightning. Even now, she could only use puppets to resist it. Whoosh, roar! The 8th wave of tribulation lightning finally descended. It was a giant purple dragon that swooped down, its might intending to flatten Mount Yiling. Sumo, Yi Kanxing, and Yuwuji naturally formed a line of defense, because the tribulation lightning's power was too great. Boom! The giant purple dragon tore through space and headed straight for Mount Yiling. Boom, boom, crack, something seemed to be wriggling deep inside Mount Yiling as several mountains collapsed. Thousands of rocks flew like meteors. At that moment, the entire Mount Yiling was being destroyed. A black mass seemed to have crawled out from the ground. Whoosh, roar. Its momentum was no less than the 8th wave of tribulation lightning. At the same time, a giant black tail rose from the ground, sweeping up countless rocks and lashing at the purple dragon in the sky. Boom, rumble. The purple dragon and the giant tail collided, once again causing a huge wave of spiritual energy between heaven and earth. It was like a collision between heaven and earth, with no clear winner. The purple dragon was scattered in the sky, but the giant tail also emitted an endless amount of bloody light. Blood rained down from the sky, creating a sea of red. Roar, roar, roar. The spirit beast inside Mount Yiling was furious. It had never suffered such a loss in its tens of thousands of years. It was already furious. Therefore, it once again switched from defense to offense, not hesitating to fight. At this point, Mount Yiling no longer needed to exist. The beast growled, then began its real attack. Pa, pa, the giant tail swept across, bringing with it a rain of blood. The tallest mountains of Mount Yiling were directly cut in half. These mountains were its burden. Rocks flew everywhere, smoke and dust rose everywhere. Heaven and earth shook. The entire Mount Yiling began to collapse from the inside out. At that moment, Sumo and the others could already see the ground under their feet cracking like a spider web. A spirit beast was born. Sumo raised an eyebrow. This spirit beast was definitely not simple. Humph, 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 humph. The little white pig became even more excited, humming incessantly. Yuwuji's face was covered by a blue veil, only a pair of beautiful eyes could be seen, but her expression was still calm. However, Yi Kanshing was completely different now. His eyes were faintly glowing red. He clenched his fists, his knuckles were slightly white. Brother Yi. Sumo was a little puzzled. However, Yi Kanshing turned a deaf ear to Sumo's call. At that moment, Yi Kanshing was completely immersed in his own world. Because that was his spirit beast. Roar, boom, the entire Mount Yiling area was completely shattered. Sumo, Yi Kanshing, and Yuwuji had already soared into the sky. The ground under their feet had already collapsed, surging black water. At the moment when the mountain collapsed, a black spirit beast slowly crawled out from the ground. It had a dragon head, a turtle body, and a snake tail. The beast was hundreds of feet in size, and its shell was full of ancient runes. Its body was surrounded by a faint black fog. Then, it crawled out from the bottom of Mount Yiling. Roar, roar, it roared to the sky. What kind of spirit beast was that? Sumo did not know. Black tortoise. Yuwuji was shocked, then she turned to look at Yi Kanshing, her eyes lit up. You are Yi Xingbai. Ha 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 ha. The black tortoise appeared. Yi Kanshing suddenly laughed to the sky, but at the end of the laughter, there was a faint sound of crying. He thought it was dead. Azura Demon Continent, Black Tortoise Pavilion, Black Tortoise Pavilion's Pavilion Master Yi Xingbai, down in the world, came back through reincarnation. Yi Kanshing sometimes almost forgot who he was. But there were still people who remembered him. Yi Xingbai was a direct disciple of Unveil. Boom, boom. Right at that moment, an imposing voice boomed out from the sky. The voice was like that of a god. How could an evil spirit of the three realms come back from the dead? Die. Chapter 4:18. Destroy. That sound echoed throughout the second layer of the ancient coin realm. All the 9 nether cultivators were shocked. Whose voice was that? Was that the ruler of the ancient coin realm? Were there really cultivators in the ancient coin realm? However, none of the 9 nether cultivators had ever seen anyone from the 9 nether secret realm. It was their first time hearing that voice. At that moment, the tribulation cloud in the void turned completely purple with the sound of annihilation. It could be said that the entire second layer of the ancient coin realm had become a purple space. The black tortoise's tribulation had caused a change in time and space. Yi Kanshing once said that in the ancient coin realm, one step could change the world. Now, a similar change was happening in the second layer. Purple chi surged from all directions and rose into the sky. The ninth wave of tribulation lightning had yet to strike. It was constantly brewing, as if it wanted to gather the power of the entire second layer to destroy the black tortoise. The wind blew and the clouds moved, but it only took an instant. Roar! By now, Yi Lingshan's face had changed beyond recognition. The entire Mount Yiling seemed to have existed because of the black tortoise's slumber. Mountains collapsed and all living things trembled. Dozens of kilometers around Leaf Spirit Mountain had become a battlefield for tribulation transcendence. Everything here would be destroyed. Other than Sumo and the rest, there were more than 10 cultivators in Mount Yiling. At this moment, the cultivators were also staring blankly at the scene before them. This was no longer an ordinary tribulation. Who would walk out of Mount Yiling alive today? Unless the black tortoise succeeded. The black tortoise's body was as black as ink, dragging its tail out of the black water. Its movements seemed to contain the vicissitudes of life. It was a spiritual beast with an extraordinary origin. It even had an immortal body and could reincarnate again. In terms of time, it came from an extremely ancient past. Roar! The black tortoise raised its head and roared at the sky. Destroy who? I want to destroy you. Its expression was arrogant, domineering, and disdainful. What have I not seen? What is this bit of tribulation lightning? Humph! The little white pig jumped and roared, Big black tortoise, go for it! Whoosh, boom! At that moment, the ninth wave of tribulation lightning finally descended from the sky. This time, it was not a dragon, but a wave. It could even be said that it was an indiscriminate attack. The ruler of the ancient money-mystic realm seemed to be willing to destroy everything. He wanted to destroy all living beings on Mount Yiling. The evil spirits of the three realms must not be allowed to exist. Woo-woo, squeak. Those low-rank spirit beasts could not resist at all. To them, this was an apocalyptic natural disaster. Roar, only the black tortoise was unyielding. It roared at the sky and slowly turned its head to look in the direction of Yi Kanshing. Its eyes were already blood-red. That was the color of the black tortoise's eyes, but at this moment, the color of Yi Kanshing's eyes was exactly the same as the black tortoise's eyes. Roar, the black turtle roared at Yi Kanshing. It was a kind of calling, a kind of expectation. It seemed to have been waiting for him to appear, and he had finally arrived. After reincarnating, neither of them had forgotten each other. How could the Black Turtle Pavilion Master not have a black turtle? Whoosh, the purple tide came up, pouring down 1,000 miles. But the black turtle's huge tail swung fiercely, like a big black broom, sweeping the first wave of purple light back to the sky. Boom, crack, paying someone back in their own coin. The sky filled with purple light affected the entire second stage. The sky and earth were shaking. Ha ha ha! Yi Kanshing laughed wildly, his long hair flying. At that moment, it was as if the Black Turtle Pavilion Master had returned to the mortal world. He could not sit back and watch the black turtle resist the heavenly tribulation. Flying up, Yi Kanshing had already landed on the back of the black turtle. That was originally his position. He was just returning. Roar, roar, with its master back, the black turtle roared. At the same time, the black tortoise opened its mouth and a ray of black light shot out, landing directly in Yi Kanshing's hand. At that moment, the expression in Yi Kanshing's eyes suddenly changed. There was a light in his eyes, a light that once belonged to the Black Turtle Pavilion Master. Whoosh, with the black light in his hand, Yi Kanshing raised his eyebrows. A surge of energy was instantly generated in his body. Crackle, crackle, Yi Kanshing's arm shook. His hand seemed to be holding a black lightning. Mara star-studded whip! Yuwuji exclaimed. Mara star-studded whip. Devil Continent's Azura World Moon Villa's revered level weapon. It was actually in the Black Turtle's body. Not to mention Yu Wuji, even Yi Kanxing himself did not expect it. When the three realms were destroyed, Yi Xingbai was just a speck of dust. He did not know where everything had gone. Mara's star-studded whip could drive the sun and moon. Yi Sanqing's temperament instantly changed. Moreover, his cultivation base was also changing. The immortal qi dispersed in an instant. Sumo did not know if Yi Kanxing had been hiding his cultivation, or if he had obtained new power from the Mara star-studded whip. There was a faint purple light between his eyebrows, but it was not obvious at this moment. In fact, it was a kind of mark of Muyun's bloodline. However, the power in Yi Sanqing's body had not been fully awakened. Nevertheless, this did not affect his cooperation with the Black Turtle to deal with this heavenly tribulation. Boom, whoosh, the overwhelming purple light fell again. This time, it was even more powerful than the previous time. However, Yi Kanxing looked at the tribulation clouds that filled the sky and couldn't help but curve the corner of his mouth coldly. Break! Yi Kanxing threw his head back and roared. He swung the Mara star-studded whip in his hand. Endless black lightning broke through the void and instantly split into thousands of streaks. Sumo could not tell what kind of power was contained in the Mara star-studded whip. However, the power was very special. The purple light that filled the sky was instantly split apart and turned black. Roar! The Black Turtle shook its head and instantly soared into the sky. At that moment, it was as if a continent had risen and shrouded the sky. Whoosh! The Black Tortoise opened its mouth, and an endless suction force formed a huge vortex in the void. The purple light that was scattered by the Mara star-studded whip had turned into a black stream of water that poured into the vortex. The river returned to the sea like a whale swallowing everything without any obstruction. It was devouring the heavenly tribulation. The scene left every cultivator who witnessed it in awe. To the Black Turtle, it was not a tribulation, but a great fortune. Everyone understood that the lightning tribulation contained an endless amount of power. The spiritual beast that resembled a dragon and a tortoise would most likely level up very quickly once it absorbed the power. The cultivators of the 9 serenities were shocked. And such a spirit beast had actually submitted to that ugly black-clothed cultivator. Yi Kanxing was a stranger to the cultivators of the 9 serenities. This was because Yi Kanxing rarely interacted with the cultivators of the 9 serenities. He had always been a loner. This time, he had coincidentally met Sumo and Yu Wuji. He did not expect to encounter such a great fortune in the hidden realm of the ancient coin. Everything from his past life had returned. This caused the slightly dispirited Yi Kanxing to slowly change. Restoring the 3 realms did not seem so far-fetched anymore. Roar! In an instant, the tribulation clouds in the sky dissipated. The dignified voice from before did not appear again. The Black Turtle had withstood the tribulation. Its cultivation level had instantly entered the God Burial realm. The ancient coin's second-layer cultivation level gradually recovered. However, Mount Yiling no longer existed. Its surroundings were filled with ravines and ravines. It was a complete mess. 100 miles away, the white camel looked up at the sky and sneered. It seemed to be talking to himself, but also to someone else. What can you do to him? Chapter 419. In the second stage realm, the storm dispersed. However, many 9 nether cultivators were still shaken. What happened just now was too shocking. Most of the 9 nether cultivators who were stuck in the second stage realm were at the divine tribulation realm or early undying realm. Just now, it was a spirit beast at the perfect stage of the undying realm. A divine burial spirit beast. Many 9 nether cultivators looked at the black tortoise in the void. It was like a small black mountain floating in the void. They couldn't help but feel fear. In the ancient money secret realm, life and death were up to fate. They didn't know who the master of the black tortoise was. Was it the sinless faction, the undying faction or the carefree faction. Roar! The black tortoise roared at the sky, as if it was challenging the heavens. However, there was no response from the sky. The tribulation clouds dispersed. Everything seemed to be over. High up in the sky, that dignified voice of reproach seemed to have never appeared. High up in the sky, the gray mist was hazy. No one could see through it. Whoosh, whoosh, suddenly, a rather dramatic scene appeared. Just now, there were hundreds of 9 nether cultivators watching the battle inside and outside Mount Yiling. However, when the tribulation clouds dispersed and the black tortoise roared, all of them flew away on the wind or magic treasures. Hee. Sumo and Yuwuji couldn't help but shake their heads and smile bitterly. It seemed that they were afraid of getting into trouble. Yi Sanqing's identity was unknown. In the ancient money-secret realm, the strong preyed on the weak. If the black tortoise became angry, none of them would be able to leave. Therefore, it was better for them to leave first. Sumo and Yuwuji weren't worried. Firstly, they believed that Yi Kanqing wouldn't harm them. Secondly, they had the confidence to deal with everything. In the void, Yi Kanqing put away the Mara star-chasing whip and patted the black tortoise's shell. He sighed. "It's been a long time, old friend." Woo-woo. The black tortoise shook its head and cried. Then, its body rapidly shrank. In the end, the mountain-like black tortoise shrank to the size of a palm and landed on Yi Sanqing's palm. Yi Kanqing floated to the ground and rubbed the black tortoise's back. His eyes were filled with endless emotion. Reincarnation and rebirth, lost and regained. Everything was just like a dream. Before entering the ancient money-mystic realm, Yi Kanqing would never have imagined that he would be able to obtain the ink turtle and the Mara star-chasing whip. Congratulations, Brother Yi. Reuniting with old friends and obtaining a divine weapon, it's truly a great fortuitous encounter. Sumo cupped her fists and said with a smile. Congratulations, Pavilion Master Yi. Yuwuji also congratulated. Yi Kanqing was Yi Xingbai. There was no doubt about this. Therefore, Yuwuji addressed him as Pavilion Master Yi. Same to you. Yi Kanqing said with a smile. It's mostly thanks to the two of you that I have such a fortuitous encounter. Back then, I thought everything was gone. When he finished speaking, Yi Kanqing let out a long sigh. Because he clearly remembered that the destruction of the 3 realms was unstoppable. In the face of the destruction of the Xing River, even the Eternal Realm cultivators were helpless, like a speck of dust. Miss Yu, did you know me back then? Yi Kanqing asked Yuwuji. I've never met you before. Yuwuji smiled bitterly. In those days, the 3 realms were heavily fortified. I've never set foot in the Devil Continent's Azura world. Miss Yu, are you a cultivator from the Heaven Continent? Yi Kanqing asked. Ha ha. Yuwuji shook his head and smiled, neither affirming nor denying. Pavilion Master Yi, when the time is right, you will know who I am. We actually have some connections. That's good. Yi Kanqing smiled. Miss Yu, please don't blame me. Today I recovered the black tortoise, and I was a little impatient. I just want to reunite the 3 realms and return my Xing River. Yuwuji said in a deep voice. Ha ha. Yi Kanqing smiled bitterly, but finally nodded. Yuwuji shook her head gently again. Her eyes were a little misty. However, no one knew what kind of emotion it represented. Sumo didn't speak at the side. Because his memory was incomplete. He didn't know anything about what happened to the 3 realms later. Therefore, silence was the best way to deal with everything. When the time was right, he was ready to ask Yi Kanqing and Yuwuji why the 3 realms were destroyed. Humph! At this time, the little white pig on Sumo's shoulder greeted the black tortoise in Yi Sanqing's hand. Unfortunately, the black tortoise gently lifted its eyelids, looked at the little white pig very indifferently, and then closed its eyes. The dragon-elephant soul-devouring beast was indeed not ordinary. However, it was only one of the 3 divine beasts of the Pure Land. In the eyes of the divine black tortoise, the little white pig was just a little kid, apart from its relatively pure bloodline. The little white pig was really not qualified to play with him. The black tortoise was a spirit beast from another world, reincarnated. Humph! When the little white pig saw the black tortoise's attitude, it felt very dissatisfied, but there was nothing it could do. "I don't want to pay attention to a black tortoise?" The little fellow simply turned around, its little butt facing the black tortoise. However, the black tortoise still didn't respond. It likes silence by nature. It wouldn't move if it could. That was the black tortoise's survival philosophy. Ha ha! Sumo smiled and patted the little white pig to comfort it, then looked at Yi Kanshing and said, "Big brother Yi, what's our next step?" Yi Kanshing pondered for a moment, then looked at Sumo and Yuwuji and said, "I won't hide it from the two of you, now my combat power has greatly increased. With the black tortoise and the divine whip in hand, even if I face a cultivator in the undead realm, I won't be afraid. So, we can completely continue to go deeper." "Enter the first level?" Yuwuji asked. "Yes." Yi Kanshing looked at Yuwuji and nodded. "In the second level mystic realm, I can meet the black tortoise again. So, I keep feeling that this mystic realm is not ordinary. The various mystic realms of the Nine Nether might really be related to the three realms. Perhaps there is also a chance. How can the evil spirits of the three realms come back to life?" "Just now, you heard Gao Tian's threat, right?" Yuwuji asked. "Of course." Yi Kanshing raised his brows. "Gods and ghosts, how can they be evil spirits?" Yuwuji sneered. "Everything here must be related to the three realms. We don't know what lies behind this mystic realm. Since we are here and have the ability, we naturally have to explore to the end." Yi Kanshing nodded. He understood Yuwuji's meaning. "Brother Su, what do you think?" Yi Kanshing looked at Sumo. Although Sumo's cultivation was still in the early stage of the soul transformation realm, Yi Kanshing understood that Sumo must have used a secret technique to suppress her cultivation. Otherwise, how could an early-stage soul transformation realm cultivator watch everything so calmly? "I am willing to risk my life to accompany you." Sumo smiled. Originally, he had the intention to enter the first-level realm, because the first-level realm was the core of the ancient money mystic realm. Now that Yi Kanshing suggested it, he naturally would not refuse. Yi Kanshing obtained the black tortoise. This was definitely not a coincidence. Sumo still believed in karma. At the same time, he felt that he would not return empty-handed. "Good." Seeing that Sumo was willing to go, Yi Kanshing laughed brightly. "Looks like the three realms are still straightforward. Then let's prepare to enter the ancient money's first-level realm." "Humph humph." Little White Pig cheered when he heard that. The black tortoise didn't even raise its head. From afar, White Camel had been looking at the three of them and couldn't help but smile. The people of the three realms are indeed extraordinary. This old man will continue to accompany you. Chapter 420. No one knew how big the second stage of the ancient money mystic realm was. The map in the hands of Sumo and the rest only showed a portion of the second stage, and the deeper they went, the simpler it became. After Mount Yiling, they headed straight for Broken Bridge Valley. Broken Bridge Valley was a valley that was cut off from the middle. Between the two mountains, there was a stone bridge that looked like the moon, but it was cut off by a sharp weapon. This valley was originally frequented by some spirit beasts. But when Sumo and the rest passed by, there was nothing left. Yi Kanshing could only smile bitterly. Because the Black Turtle's tribulation had alarmed the entire second stage. At this moment, when the Black Turtle's aura came, almost all the spirit beasts in the second stage retreated. So along the way they did not meet with anything. Be it cultivators or spirit beasts, all of them retreated. Yuwuji found a few stalks of immortal herbs and elixirs in the Broken Bridge Valley. Other than that, Sumo and the rest had gained nothing. But they were not in a hurry. Everyone had their own fortuitous encounters, and no one knew what would appear in the next moment. The three of them crossed the broken bridge and went over a few mountains. At this moment, the map in their hands was completely useless. The map of the ancient money mystic realm ended here. There was a slight fog in front. From afar, the mountains were covered in layers, misty. Our adventure has really begun. Yi Kanxing smiled. Suemo and Yuwuji both nodded. There was a trace of anticipation in their eyes. Although there were many 9 nether cultivators who entered the ancient money mystic realm, but those who could explore the areas outside the map were probably less than a tenth. Because it required absolute strength and courage. Yi Kanxing placed the black turtle in his hands in the air. In an instant, the black turtle grew to a size of 1 square foot and carried Yi Kanxing. Roar! The black turtle growled. That was a kind of satisfaction. Yi Sanqing's lips curled. The black turtle cabinet master, Yi Xingbai, was originally supposed to stand on top of the black turtle and roam the Devil Continent. His future was unpredictable, and Yi Kanxing had to be ready for battle at all times. Moreover, back then, Yi Xingbai could be said to be number 1 in defense. Even if he challenged someone of a higher cultivation realm, he wouldn't lose. Yuwuji also waved his hand. Her white sand appeared again, forming rings of light that looked like water wheels around her, and a wheel of white sand condensed under her feet. The clouds were boundless, and the white sand was invincible. As long as Sha Bujin was present, no one would be able to hurt Yuwuji. Seeing that the two of them were ready, Sumo also prepared to take out her magic treasure to protect herself. Actually, he had a lotus platform that was enough to intimidate everything. Humph. But at that moment, the little white pig snorted coldly at the black turtle. Then, with a shake of its body, it instantly grew bigger. A 6-meter-tall Dracophant soul-devouring beast appeared in midair. When the wings were spread, they were about 50 to 60 feet long. Roar! The big white pig bared its teeth at the black turtle and growled. The meaning was very simple. I can also become a mount. Don't think that you're the only one who can do it. Oh? Sumo couldn't help but laugh when she saw that. Of course, he knew that the Dracophant soul-devouring beast could be used as a mount. Back then, crippled Longzi of 5 wheels rode a big white pig called the White Dragon Beast. That White Dragon Beast contained a trace of the Dracophant soul-devouring beast's bloodline. However, Sumo's Dracophant soul-devouring beast usually appeared in the form of a little white pig, and rarely transformed into other forms. Unexpectedly, this fellow actually took the initiative to transform into this mount form today. It seemed that this fellow was stimulated by the black turtle. Sumo smiled and nodded. He naturally wouldn't refuse such a good thing. Then, he moved and directly landed on the back of the Dracophant soul-devouring beast. Flat and soft, Sumo sat cross-legged, feeling very comfortable. It seemed that in the future, she really had to let the little white pig transform and grow. Roar, roar! The little white pig that had transformed into a big white pig roared softly again, and at the same time, it lightly flapped its wings. However, the black turtle's eyes were slightly closed, totally ignoring it. This made the little white pig rather depressed. Yi Kanxing looked at everything and couldn't help but smile. Everyone get ready, let's go. Yi Kanxing urged the black turtle to walk at the front. Sumo and Yuwuji stood on the 2 sides, the 3 of them maintained a distance of 7 to 8 feet, and then moved forward. Without a map, they could only explore their way forward. The 3 of them had already spread out their divine sense. It could be said that the radius of 300 miles was covered by their divine sense. Once there was any movement, they would immediately discover it. The 3 of them were very cautious. They thought that they should have entered the hinterland of the 2nd stage realm. At this moment, the entire mystic region's sky was getting darker, and there was a sense of death, as if night was about to fall. After walking for hundreds of miles, they still hadn't met any other 9 nether cultivators. However, at this moment, Sumo's brows were slightly furrowed. Because this place actually gave him a somewhat familiar feeling, as if he had been here before. These were all Xiao Luo's memories. There are mountains and water ahead. Yi Kanshing stood on the black turtle and said, "Whoosh, whoosh." In just a moment, the sound of flowing water was heard. At the same time, they saw everything clearly. In front of them, there was indeed a river, flowing slowly. The water was not large. However, the color of the water was dim, and they couldn't see the bottom of the river. On the other side of the river, there was actually a monster that looked like a cow, but not a cow, and a horse, but not a horse, with a body of earthy yellow long hair, but without a tail, lowering its head to drink water. Moo, moo. The monster let out a sound similar to that of a cow. It raised its head and looked at Sumo and the others. Its eyes actually emitted 2 rays of faint blue light, and then it turned around and ran. "Yellow soul beast?" Sumo blurted out. Unfortunately, that little beast disappeared in an instant. "Brother Su, do you know that spirit beast?" Yi Kanshing asked. "Yes." Sumo nodded. "This little beast is called the Yellow Soul Beast. It is an existence of the 3 realms. Why would it also appear here?" "Yellow Soul Beast, drinking the spring of sorrow." Sumo muttered to himself, and then looked down at the river. "Then this river is the spring of sorrow. This place is actually exactly the same as the desolate soul mystic realm." Sumo finally understood where that sense of familiarity came from. The hundreds of miles they had just walked was clearly the desolate soul mystic realm. However, there was no black illusion demon mountain here, nor was there anything from back then. In Xiao Luo's memories, the desolate soul mystic realm had long collapsed. Why would it appear here? However, to be precise, this was only a corner of the desolate soul mystic realm. Yi Kanshing and Yuwuji didn't know what Sumo was talking about. They had never been to the desolate soul mystic realm of the sea desolate divine region. "What is the desolate soul mystic realm?" Yi Kanshing asked. "An ancient battlefield in the sea desolate divine region. However, it should have been completely destroyed back then." Sumo frowned. He didn't understand why the scene of the desolate soul mystic realm appeared in the ancient coin mystic realm. Could this place be the 3 realms? Back then, everything in the desolate soul mystic realm actually existed for the existence of the desolate soul beast. The final explosion had long destroyed everything. Sumo knew that Amu had finally gathered all the spirit beasts and should have awakened the desolate soul beast. The desolate soul beast should have belonged to Amu. However, Sumo also knew that in his tattered cloth bag, there was a desolate soul beast puppet from the purple-clothed resurrection puppet of the corpseless sect. That puppet was exactly the same as the desolate soul beast back then. Everything was very complicated. As the 3 spoke, they did not stop and kept going deeper. Whoosh, whoosh, the water flow became even more rapid. Black water. That's actually the Black Water River? This time, it was Yuwuji who spoke. Sumo looked around and her expression changed. Indeed, a large river flowed west. The color of the water was as black as ink. That was the desolate sea black water. Chapter 421. In the past, the 3 realms, the desolate sea 5 regions. In the east was the eastern mountain range, in the west was the black water, in the south was the cloud desert, in the north was the northern wasteland, and in the middle was the vast green plains. Of course, Sumo and Yuwuji had seen the western black water before. Especially Sumo, black water had left a deep impression on him. Back then, there was a huge battle at the Holy Maiden ceremony of the Immortal Ghost sect. Xin Yan's hair was as white as frost. She had fought to the death for Amu. She had said that she would rather have a beauty than the country. It was unknown how many people had shed tears. Meng Hun, Qian Hua, Azure Fiend, the 3 young masters of Zio, and all their past lives were vivid in Sumo's mind. Amu's demonic coffin moved about, almost overturning the entire black water. However, after Amu fell into the 6 paths, there was no news of him for more than 200 years until the great battle of Brahma. Ai. Sumo let out a long sigh. It was unbearable to recall the past. But how could there be black water in the ancient coin-hidden realm? Sumo spread out her divine sense and followed the black water for thousands of miles. However, there was no end to the black water. This area seemed to extend infinitely. Brother Su, you also recognize the black water? Yuwuji was surrounded by white sand, making him look like a fairy. Sumo frowned and nodded. First, it was the desolate soul mystic realm, then the black water. Everything about the ancient coin mystic realm was strange. Yi Kanxing, on the other hand, stared blankly at the river. He had never seen Blackwater before, because he had never been to the desolate sea divine region before. However, Yi Kanxing knew that the desolate sea Blackwater, azure river of forgetfulness, and immeasurable floating dust were actually a river. The great river ran through the three realms. It had no beginning and no end. Later on, the three realms became one and became the Milky Way. That river of time had long since ceased to exist. Why was there black water here? Everyone had the same question in their hearts. Yi Kanxing and Yuwuji looked at each other and saw deep confusion in each other's eyes. There was no such river in the Milky Way. The shattering of the Star River was a mystery. At present, everything here was also a mystery. Looking at the black water, Sumo was also lost in her thoughts. Brother Yi, miss you, it seems like your deductions are correct. This ancient coin secret realm must have something to do with the three realms. Sumo said in a low voice. You are a desolate sea cultivator? Yuwuji asked. I won't hide it from you too. My memory isn't complete. I can't remember many things. Sumo smiled bitterly. Just as Miss Yu said, when the time is right, you will naturally know who I am. Yuwuji laughed and didn't think much of it. The three of them respected each other's secret. This was the basis of their cooperation. Why did the three realms, or the Milky Way, shatter? Sumo asked with a frown. This question was equivalent to crossing countless memories for him, so Sumo felt that her question was a little strange. Yi Kanxing and Yuwuji didn't feel that way, but the two of them shook their heads gently. The Milky Way's apocalypse came from nowhere. Yi Kanxing frowned. Actually, my last memory is also a little blurry. Many things seem to have happened, but they also seem to be illusions. My last memory is of countless black lights devouring everything. The entire Milky Way world seemed to be pulled into a black hole. Then, everything shattered in the black hole. The power of the eternal realm was useless. All your senses were stripped away. Yi Kanxing tried hard to recall everything with a pained expression. All the light has disappeared. The world was overturned. Yuwuji said with a trembling voice. Whether it was the green light or the white light, they couldn't stop that destruction. That should be a power beyond the Milky Way. It crushed everything. Back then, everything that the Holy Father Amu created was destroyed. The Holy Father Amu? Sumo was stunned. This was because, as far as he could remember, Amu was still a Tribulation Realm cultivator. He was worlds away from becoming a venerable one. Yes. Yi Kanxing seemed to understand a little of Sumo's confusion. Amu's final realm was definitely that of a supremacy, or even higher. The people of the Milky Way called him the god of creation. He erased all karma and left the three realms. He said that the Milky Way would live forever. But, erased karma and left the three realms. Sumo smiled coldly. If karma could be erased, why would there be reincarnation? Eternal life? Then why did the Milky Way shatter? Now, Sumo somewhat understood the roar of the red-clothed Mu Jinghong in a frenzied state during the battle at Windwheel Mountain. Who said eternal life? Who lied to us? Eternal life. The direction of the three realms Milky Way was not what Mu had promised. Perhaps there was an unknown change. The Holy Father Amu would never push the three realms to destruction. The supremacies know more about the situation. But now there is no news of him. Yi Kanxing said, who doesn't know who is still alive and who will wake up? Yes. Yuwuji also said, everyone in the Milky Way believes that the destruction of the Milky Way has nothing to do with the Holy Father Amu. But no one knows why. Sumo listened to the two, smiled coldly, and did not speak. The Amu in her memory was a mortal enemy. Sumo could tell that Yi Kanshing and Yuwuji admired Mu very much. However, even though they were once eternal realm cultivators, the destruction of the three realms left a deep shadow in their hearts. There was a kind of despair in Yi Kanshing and Yuwuji's tone. For eternal realm cultivators to remember that kind of despair even after reincarnating, how terrifying was the destruction of the Milky Way back then? One day, the truth will come to light. Sumo said to comfort herself. Let's figure out everything in the secret realm of the ancient money first. Yi Kanshing took a deep breath and nodded heavily. Yuwuji also went through his own thoughts. They didn't find anything above the black water. But when they crossed the black water, the sky became slightly brighter. This place seemed to be another small spacetime. There were green mountains and clear water ahead. This place was very different from the place they had just passed. There is a village ahead, Yi Kanshing said. Sumo and Yuwuji also discovered the village ahead at this time. The village wasn't big, and there were only a few dozen families scattered around. Their houses were very old, even older than the houses in the Netherworld realm. After seeing this village, Yuwuji couldn't help but slightly raise her eyebrows. Her gaze fell on a relatively large house in the middle of the village. At this time, the three of them had already arrived outside the village. There wasn't a single person in the ancient village. However, this village gave them a very strange feeling. The tea is fragrant, and the soup is very warm. Yi Kanshing smiled bitterly. It looks like someone just left. Unfortunately. Hee. Sumo shook her head and smiled. Unfortunately, this is not the truth. The time in this space has been frozen, Yuwuji said. It has stopped at a specific moment. Everyone has disappeared. The three of them looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Then, Yuwuji's gaze fell on the house in the middle of the village. Because there was an ancient signboard on the house. Ordinary people would think that it was a signboard with no words. However, Yuwuji made a hand seal and wiped her eyes. In her eyes, three ancient words were reflected: Magical Fantasy House. Sure enough, Yuwuji sighed inwardly. She has been to this village. Chapter 422. In the vast universe, all realms coexisted. Back then, Amu combined the 9 coffins into one and destroyed the karma roulette, making everything perfect and leaving no regret. Then, he took Shin Yen to the immeasurable fairy and left. However, no one knew where Amu went. In the end, the 3 realms became the Milky Way. After the battle of eternal creation, the 3 realms were divided and merged into countless stars. After that, no one knew how many years and how much time had passed. Mu became the saint, the god of creation, and a legend. For a certain period of time, the Milky Way was truly eternal. The stars were bright, the river was clear, and the sea was calm. As long as the star was not destroyed, the person would live forever. That was the most glorious time of the Milky Way. There was a star with a village on it. That village was full of mortals. But there was one exception, but they also lived a mortal life. The people in the village did not know anything. The man in black was the demonic son, and the woman in purple was called Huan Hua. They were all peerless venerables. A pair of daughters in red, 2 ancient ghost bodies, Wang Yu and Shin Ming. The family was happy and harmonious, not caring about time. Occasionally, Yuer would stare blankly at the stars in the sky at night. Would her brother suddenly come back? Unfortunately, within the Milky Way, there was almost no news of Amu. Yuwuji had been to this village before. Or rather, Yuchiomu had been to this village before. Because she and the Azure Demon lived on the other side of that star. She had been here more than once. The enchanted house was named after Huan Hua and the demonic son. In the eyes of mortals, this was an ordinary house. On the door, there was a nameless black plaque. However, in the eyes of those above the original immortal level, it was a forbidden area. The entire enchanted house had an invincible forbidden map. Wang Ju's forbidden map was unparalleled in the world and could kill immortals. Even if you were at the 9th level of the Eternal Realm, if you did not have permission, you would also perish outside the old house. The Azure Demon, Yu Qiumu, and Xing Fei were all frequent guests of this old house. Many times they drank and sang, many times they talked about the past. They were the stories of the universe, the legends of the 3 realms. However, when the Milky Way shattered, she saw Azure Demon and Xing Fei melt in the nameless power with her own eyes, and there was no news about the House of Illusionary Fiend. In fact, in terms of despair, Yu Wuji far surpassed Yi Kanxing. Because, in her opinion, the greenish-white light was an invincible existence. One was always calm and unperturbed, while the other could kill anything the light shone on. However, they were unable to stop everything. Who could stop him? At that moment, Yu Qiumu understood that even if all the venerables were present, they would not be able to stop everything. What kind of power was that? Now, why would the magical fantasy mansion appear here? Yu Wuji landed at the door of the phantom mansion, but her protective white sand did not dissipate. Then, she gently waved her hand. Creak. The door of the old house opened. Yu Wuji entered through the door without any obstruction. Sumo and Yi Kanxing withdrew their spirit beasts and followed them in. They didn't feel anything wrong. There shouldn't be any forbidden techniques here, Yu Wuji said. Sumo and Yi Kanxing also quietly spread out their divine senses. This House of Illusionary Fiend had a total of 3 courtyards, which could be called a luxurious house in this village. However, the layout was simple. The 3 courtyards were almost identical. Each courtyard had 3 main rooms and 2 side rooms. However, the first courtyard was more like a workshop, with many pieces of wood scattered inside, and even a completed coffin. However, it was really an ordinary coffin. Sumo frowned. She knew that Amu used to make coffins. What is this place? Sumo asked. This is the former residence of Demon Boy and Huan Hua in the Milky Way world. Yu Wuji answered. Former residence of Demon Boy and Huan Hua? Sumo didn't respond, but Yi Kanxing was already surprised. There was always a sky beyond the sky, and a demon above the demon. After the 3 realms became the Milky Way, who didn't know the story of Angel Girl and Demon Boy? More importantly, Demon Boy was the master of the Holy Father Amu. Demon Boy's status in the Milky Way even surpassed that of other supremacies. However, almost no one knew where they lived in seclusion in the Milky Way world. Why would their former residence appear in the ancient coin realm? Yi Kanxing looked at Yu Wuji blankly. Because those who could go to Demon Boy's former residence were definitely not ordinary people in the 3 realms. Yu Wuji didn't think about anything else. She just wanted to take a closer look at this old residence. The second courtyard of Illusionary Fiend House was planted with many strange flowers and plants. Yu Wuji knew that this was the courtyard of Wang Yu and Shen Ming back then. At this moment, the strange flowers were in full bloom, and the immortal herbs were emitting a fragrance. Yu Wuji raised an eyebrow and reached out with one hand. She wanted to pick a charm flower in her hand. However, her spiritual power gently glided over the spirit flower, and there was no reaction at all. Huh! Yu Wuji was stunned. Could it be that everything in front of her was an illusion? She leaned over and touched it gently with her hand. The charm flower was indeed real. However, she couldn't pick it. At this moment, Sumo also saw that there was an unfinished game of chess on the stone table in the corridor not far away. The black and white pieces were evenly matched. It was impossible to tell the winner from the situation on the chessboard. Brother Yi, are you in the mood? Let's continue playing, Sumo said. Oh. Yi Kanxing didn't know what Sumo meant. Why was she in the mood to play chess? He followed Sumo to the stone table. Sumo played white first and casually put down a piece. In fact, Sumo's chess skills were absolutely top-notch. Whether it was Muron of the Grand Wilderness or second senior brother Windwheel, they were all top-notch chess players. However, Sumo's move was almost without any order. Not knowing when to advance or retreat would not help the situation. Yi Kanshing was also stunned when he saw Sumo's move. This move was almost equivalent to giving way. Between experts, the difference of one piece was the deciding factor. On the other hand, Yi Kanshing was quite meticulous in making his move. At this moment, the black side was winning. The corner of Sumo's mouth curled up. Then, she casually put down another piece. That kind of move was clearly made by a person who didn't know how to play chess. Seeing this, Yi Kanshing couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Brother Su, are you going to give up and admit defeat?" As he spoke, Yi Kanshing directly put down a piece. As soon as this black piece was put down, Sumo's white piece was already unable to turn the situation around. It was a dead end. "Haha! Brother Yi, look again!" Sumo smiled and pointed at the chessboard. Something strange happened. Just now, Sumo and Yi Kanshing put down a total of 4 pieces. However, at this moment, the situation on the chessboard was actually exactly the same as before they put down their pieces. The 4 pieces that they put down were long gone. None of the pieces in the chessboard box were missing. Even the way they were placed was not the slightest change. Yi Kanshing was stunned. "Everything in this place has been sealed. We don't have the ability to change everything here. No matter how we move, everything will immediately return to its original state." Sumo looked around and said, "Therefore, Miss, you can't remove the charm of Fantasy Flower. We can't change the chess game. Angel, Devil Boy, they really live up to their reputation." Sumo sighed from the bottom of her heart. Although he felt extremely complicated at the mention of Angel Girl Fantasy Flower, he had to admit that everything in this phantom mansion was not ordinary. If it wasn't for Yuwuji, Sumo wouldn't have dared to come in so easily. If there was a killing array here, the 3 of them would probably be killed in seconds. However, Sumo had already guessed that Yuwuji was Yuchiomu. Of course, Azure Demon's woman wouldn't have an accident in the old mansion of Devil Boy and Fantasy Flower. Could it be that this is the forbidden time? Yuwuji frowned slightly. Time imprisonment, that's the supreme secret technique of the Holy Father Amu. Chapter 423. The Restriction of Time. Sumo's eyes narrowed. Because the Supreme Emperor of Tai Huang had died under Amu's instant and eternity. That was also a type of restriction of time. "Miss Yu, are you sure this is the restriction of time?" Yi Kanshing asked. However, Yuwuji shook her head lightly. "How could I possibly understand a holy venerate's technique? I'm just guessing. Otherwise, we can't explain the situation in front of us." Sumo and Yi Kanshing smiled bitterly. At this time, they had arrived at the 3rd courtyard. Yuwuji remembered that this last courtyard was where Mo Lang and Huan Hua usually lived. But now, everything had retained its original appearance. There were ancient trees, stone tables, and stone benches. Only in the middle of the courtyard, there was an additional purple pond, shimmering with light. However, none of the 3 of them could see through what it was. It was also Yuwuji's first time seeing the purple pond. She remembered that this place had been flat before, and there was nothing there. She tried to throw a few grains of white sand into the purple pond. The white sand sank into the pond, but could still be seen clearly. It seemed that the purple pond was only an illusory existence. Sumo and Yi Kanshing could see it clearly from the side, and they couldn't help but frown. They had scanned the entire 3rd courtyard with their divine senses. There was a stone table in a corridor. However, what was placed on it was not a chessboard, but a wine pot and wine cup. A wine pot and 2 half-bowls of wine. The fragrance of the wine wafted through the air, refreshing the mind. With a thought, Sumo used her telekinesis to lift the wine pot and filled the half-bowls of wine to the brim. However, as soon as he put down the wine pot, the half-filled bowl of wine returned to its original state. Tisk, tisk. Sumo shook her head. With his current realm, he couldn't understand this at all. Just what kind of profound technique was this? Holy Father Amu. Sumo took a deep breath. If all of this was done by Amu, then he really didn't know what kind of heights Amu had reached in the end. Time imprisonment. To Sumo, this was simply inconceivable. The three of them went around the magical fantasy mansion, but apart from the purple pool that they couldn't understand, there was nothing else they could do. They didn't find anything. Thus, the three of them could only go back the way they came and leave the house. The situation in the other parts of the village was almost the same. Everything was confined to a specific moment. Yuuji was puzzled. There wasn't even the slightest trace of a fight. This was different from the situation she and Qing Mozi had encountered in the past. That day, when the mysterious power attacked, Azure Demon and Xing Fei fought. Had Mo Lang and Huan Hua disappeared without a trace? There were also Wang Yu and Xin Ming, who had ancient ghost bodies. Any one of these four people could shake the galaxy. How could he disappear so quietly? Yuuji couldn't believe it. However, she didn't have a reasonable explanation. After all, the galaxy of the three realms had been broken. Everyone couldn't be found. She didn't even know where Azure Demon was, let alone anything else. At the edge of the ancient village, Sumo, Yi Kanxing, and Yuuji, the three reincarnators from the three realms, floated in the air and looked at the ancient village in silence. After a while, Sumo frowned and finally spoke. I have a speculation. Yes. Yi Kanxing and Yuuji responded at the same time. Let's hear it. Could this ancient coin's secret land be formed by the fragments of the three realms? Sumo said surprisingly. Yi Kanxing and Yuuji were both stunned. They really hadn't thought about this. The galaxy was broken, but there were some relatively intact fragments. They passed through time and space and fell here, forming the ancient coin's secret land. Sumo said, it's possible that not only the ancient coin's secret land, but the entire nine secluded secret land is formed by the fragments of the three realms. Nine secluded secret land. The fragments of the three realms. Sumo's speculation was quite bold, which shocked Yi Kanxing and Yuuji. The galaxy was broken, but it doesn't mean it's completely dead. In the vast universe, there is still its aura. In the Izong world, there are many fragments related to it. Sumo took a deep breath. Strictly speaking, we are also fragments of the three realms, aren't we? Everything from the Milky Way is a part of it. Broken, all fragments, Yi Kanxing said slowly. The galaxy was broken, but it doesn't mean it's completely dead. The galaxy was broken, but it doesn't mean it's completely dead. Yuuji muttered to himself. If Sumo's speculation was correct, it meant that many people, many things, and many things might still exist. It's just that they might exist in a different form, or they might be preserved in their original form. For example, the village in front of them. First, there was the desolate Soul Secret Land, then the Black Water, and finally the ancient village in front of them. Sumo thought about all the possibilities and felt that his speculation was correct. Everything here was formed by the fragments of the three realms. Brother Su, if it's as you said, then who integrated these fragments into a space? This secret land couldn't have been formed naturally during the Great Shattering. Yi Kanxing asked. Holy Father Mu. Yi Kanxing gave an answer. Mu again. Sumo smiled bitterly in his heart. He was extremely eager to recover all his memories. He wanted to see what happened after that. The title of God of Creation wasn't something that just anyone could take on. I keep feeling that it wasn't Holy Father Amu. Yuuji said. Then who was it? Yi Kanxing asked. Holy Lotus. Yuuji said slowly. Ancient Holy Lotus Li Shui? Sumo frowned. Li Shui also became a venerable? Yuwuji shook his head. I don't know if the Holy Lotus became a venerable. However, I know that the Holy Lotus had an extraordinary origin. I heard that during the Demon Sealing War, it was Li Shui who transformed into his three-eyed form and used an unknown power to subdue the demonic realm remnant flower. Most importantly, Li Shui left the three realms after this war. And he came to hide. Back then, during the Demon Sealing War, Yi Kanxing wasn't present. Sumo hadn't recovered all of his memories. And the reason why Yuwuji knew about it was because of Green Devil. These words made Sumo and Yi Sanqing's hearts tremble again. Yi Kanxing asked, he came to Yizang World? Yuwuji nodded. Perhaps, to be precise, the Holy Lotus didn't come to Yizang World, but returned to Yizang World. The ancient Holy Lotus was originally from Yizang World. For him, the three realms was just a journey. Yi Kanxing sucked in a breath of cold air. Traveling was one of the ways for cultivators to cultivate. However, this was the first time he heard of someone using an entire world as a place to cultivate. That was really a big deal. However, Sumo remained silent after hearing this. He felt that it wasn't Li Shui, because he had seen Li Beihan in the Netherworld realm. His temperament was exactly the same as Li Shui's. Sumo understood. His surname was Li, and his name was Beihan, and he had given her a lotus jade pendant. Sumo didn't know how much time she had spent in the cycle of reincarnation. However, Li Beihan was definitely a descendant of the Holy Lotus. Chapter 424. The secret realm of the ancient money was formed from fragments of the three realms. On this point, Yi Kanxing and Yuwuji both felt that Sumo's conjecture was very reasonable. However, they couldn't come to a conclusion as to who or what kind of power made these fragments come together. Amu or Li Water, perhaps these were not the answers. In the ancient village, Sumo's group paused for a while before deciding to continue forward. At this time, they were very curious what they would encounter ahead. Would they be reunited with the three realms or the Milky Way? The three leapt out of the ancient village. Little White Pig and Black Tortoise were still their mount. Yuwuji still had the white sand shield. However, the moment they left the ancient village, swoosh, swoosh, several rays of light suddenly flew from the void. Those rays of light were extremely fast, as if they had the power to break through the air. Undying poison arrows. Sumo instantly felt the power of undying and thought of a legend in the ancient money's secret realm. In the second realm, there would occasionally be wooden arrows. No one knew who shot them. The arrows were highly poisonous. Anyone who touched them would die. Capable of destroying deities, undying cultivators. Undying poison arrows were something that Sumo and the others had been wary of. However, on their way here, they had passed the ancient money map and did not encounter the so-called poison arrows. They did not expect to encounter them as soon as they left the ancient village. However, they had just passed this place. Why did they not encounter them just now? Swoosh, 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 swoosh. There were 6 poison arrows in total, 2 for each person. Yi Kanxing stood on the black tortoise, not waiting for him to act. The black tortoise had already lifted its head, spitting out 2 streams of black saliva. The black water of the black tortoise was the bane of all wood. Tao Yao back then was not even afraid of the phoenix fire, but turned into smoke under the black tortoise's saliva. The undying poison arrows were also a special kind of wood. Hiss hiss, they were turned into smoke by the black tortoise's saliva. No matter what power of undying, it was useless. Yuwuji's method was even simpler. The white sand desert automatically reacted. In an instant 2 white shields formed in the path of the poison arrows. Puff puff, 2 poisonous arrows were shot into the sand shield. It was only half a foot deep, but it was impossible for it to come out. Undying poison arrow, Yuwuji sneered. Then, with a wave of her hand, the 2 arrows wrapped in white sand appeared in front of her. At this time, Sumo had already retrieved 2 arrows. Originally, the little white pig wanted to show off. Of course, it also had the ability to use its silver wings to directly sweep away the two divine arrows. Unfortunately, Sumo didn't give him a chance at all. Among the three of them, Sumo's cultivation seemed to be the weakest. However, this time, Sumo didn't hide too much. With a wave of his hand, he kept the two undying poison arrows into his sleeve. Actually, it was a very ordinary move, heaven and earth in the sleeve. However, it was impossible for a soul transformation realm cultivator to collect an undying level poison arrow. This move meant that Sumo was at least an undying cultivator. Yi Sanqing's eyes lit up. It seemed that the three of them definitely had the battle strength of an undying realm, or even stronger. In this way, their safety was better guaranteed. Sumo also looked at the arrow in her hand. The arrow was 3 feet long, made of a kind of purple wood. It was very heavy. The tip of the arrow was slightly red, as if it had been soaked and then polished. The tail of the arrow had 3 bird feathers. With a thought, Sumo erased the undying force attached to the arrow. The arrow was actually a one-time attack magic weapon. It was definitely a magic weapon of a cultivator. The tip of the arrow was indeed highly toxic. Even an undying cultivator would undoubtedly die if they were shot. Hee. Sumo sneered. It seems that someone is ready to make a move against us. However, this kind of method is really lacking. With that said, he looked at Sumo and raised his eyebrows. The 2 arrows in his hand had been directly shot back. At the same time, Yuwuji did the same thing. Chi-Chi. The strength of the 2 people was slightly different. However, they were far better than the poisonous arrows that flew over. Sumo's arrows were faster, but they flew in almost the same direction. Their target was a towering tree hundreds of feet away. Boom, all 4 divine arrows hit the target. However, both Sumo and Yuwuji attached the explosive force to the arrows. The big tree suddenly snapped in the middle. The purplish-yellow smoke rose up. Its crown had already fallen to the ground. Looking again, there were actually dozens of poisonous arrows hidden in its trunk that had yet to be shot. At this time, Sumo, Yi Kanxing, and Yuwuji had already arrived in front of the big tree. Originally, the big tree was full of leaves, but now it instantly turned into withered branches. This big tree turned out to be an automatic arrow barrel. Mechanical wood. Yi Kanxing frowned. Yuwuji did not know what it meant, but Sumo understood. It was a very simple wooden mechanism, and could be said to be the lowest level of puppet. In other words, the towering tree just now was fake, and its existence was a kind of mechanism. Sumo looked back. The firing area of this big tree was facing the entrance of the ancient village. It seemed that its setting was quite particular. However, for the current Sumo and the others, it was really not a threat. The setting of this mechanical wood, in Sumo's view, seemed to be somewhat useless. This mechanical wood absolutely could not kill cultivators above the undying middle stage. The ancient money secret realm must have its own cultivators. The 9 nether cultivators would not be so bored as to set up such a mechanism here. Yi Kanxing said. Sumo and Yuwuji nodded. It seemed that there must be a hand behind the ancient money secret realm controlling everything. Then, could it be that some of the so-called opportunities were also arranged by someone? What was the purpose of the ancient money secret realm's existence? Everything was a mystery. The few of them decided to continue forward. Along the way, they encountered a few more mechanical wood. However, they were easily dealt with by Sumo and the others. However, they gradually found a few corpses. Those corpses were all 9 nether cultivators. If there were undying cultivators, there should also be sinless cultivators. Among them, the majority were deity tribulation middle stage, with 1 or 2 undying realm occasionally. Most of the cultivators were hit by the undying poison arrow. Their corpses were completely stiff, and gradually began to turn red. A few cultivators should have been killed by other cultivators, as their corpses still looked natural. Sumo frowned. At this time, they encountered a mechanical wood every few dozen feet. It seemed that the arrangement of this mechanical wood was quite profound. Chi-chi. The black tortoise once again spat out 3 undying poison arrows. And in front of them, there happened to be a cultivator who had just been shot down. Sumo raised her brows, and urged the little white pig to catch that cultivator. That was a undying early-stage cultivator. "Brother!" Sumo called out. He originally wanted to save that cultivator, but the venom of the undying poison arrow had begun to spread rapidly. That cultivator's face had already begun to turn red. "Don't enter the first stage, there's a ghost." That cultivator glanced at Sumo, struggled to say that sentence, and then went silent. His body also began to turn red and stiffen rapidly. At this time, Sumo noticed that other than that arrow, this cultivator was already covered in wounds. Moreover, he wasn't advancing forward just now. Instead, he was flying in the direction of the 3 of them. In other words, this cultivator had escaped. Sumo frowned as she looked ahead. Not far away. At this time, at the end of the forest, there was actually a stone tablet. Ancient money first stage, not dead or mad. Chapter 425. Once the ancient coin was heavy, not dead but crazy. At this moment, Sumo and the other 2 were already standing in front of the stone tablet. It was a black stone tablet, no more than 1 zhang high and no more than 3 feet wide. The style was simple and unadorned, but ordinary. Unknowingly, Sumo was already standing in the middle. Indistinctly, the 3 of them actually regarded Sumo as the leader. That was a very strange change of status, but very natural. At this moment, this stone tablet seemed to be divided into 2 worlds. The side where Sumo and the other 2 stood was a dense forest. Many of the mechanisms had been destroyed by Sumo and the others, or they had already stopped firing. On the other side of the stone tablet, it was shrouded in mist, making it impossible to see. That fog seemed to be able to absorb divine sense. Sumo, Yi Kanshing and Yu Wuji's divine sense could only spread out for tens of zhang. This was almost equivalent to the normal visual distance of mortals. First-degree realm. Not dead but crazy. Are we going in? Yi Kanshing asked with a smile. Of course. Sumo's lips curled. How can we catch tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? A stone tablet here as a warning, on the contrary, makes people more suspicious. Revealing 300 taels of silver here. Yu Wuji also sneered. The 3 of them did not hesitate and quickly came to an agreement. Sumo and Yi Kanshing respectively urged their spiritual beasts, and the white sand wheel under Yu Wuji's feet slightly dispersed. Bold, not reckless, but skillful. The reason why the 3 of them dared to come in, of course, was because they had something to rely on. However, they were all very vigilant. Divine sense could only spread out for tens of zhang. To a cultivator, it was almost like a mortal walking at night. Humph humph. Roar roar. Fortunately, they still had 2 spiritual beasts. Whether it was the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast or the black tortoise, their spiritual sense was better than Sumo and Yi Kanshing. They could sense many things in advance. The fog was thick, so the 3 of them did not move very fast. However, they had already walked for several li and at this moment, a person suddenly rushed out from the fog. An immortal cultivator. The Dracophant soul-devouring beast was the first to react. The little white pig rushed head-on. With a flap of his left wing, he slashed forward like a broadsword. The cultivators who charged out of the fog were already like arrows at the end of their flight. Actually, rather than saying that he killed his way out, it would be more accurate to say that he fled in a panic. However, he didn't expect to meet other people, so he didn't have time to call for help. Wait! Sumo shouted, silently cursing the little white pig's recklessness. However, the little white pig was eager to gain merit and wanted to compete with the black tortoise. Therefore, as soon as Sumo's voice came out, her silver wings had already swept the undying cultivator. Puff! The cultivator was sliced into two. In fact, if it was a head-on battle, the little white pig would not have been able to kill an undying cultivator so easily. However, this undying cultivator was already seriously injured and his spiritual power was exhausted. Even without the little white pig's attack, he would not have been able to live much longer. He was only holding on to his last breath. Nonsense! Sumo's expression darkened. The dragon-elephant soul-devouring beast was after all still a beast. If it indiscriminately killed an undying cultivator, wouldn't it be no different from a vicious beast? Sumo scolded. The little white pig also felt that what he did was wrong, so he lowered his head in silence, not daring to even make a sound. Next time, regardless of friend or foe, if you rashly hurt someone again, I will throw you back into the storage bag. Go into closed-door meditation for 100 years. At this time, Sumo had already arrived in front of the undying cultivator's corpse. He scanned with his divine sense and naturally understood that the little white pig's attack was not the final fatal blow. There were at least several fatal wounds on the undying cultivator's body. Unfortunately, Sumo couldn't see what kind of person or technique injured the cultivator. His wounds were very strange. Even so, Sumo still wanted to teach the little white pig a lesson, so that there would be no more trouble in the future. The moment the undying cultivator was killed, a dark brown, withered wood-like arm suddenly stretched out from the fog. Its target was not Sumo and the others, but the undying cultivator who just escaped. Puff! The arm directly grabbed the upper body of the undying cultivator and quickly retracted. Seeing this, Yi Kanshing did not say anything and shook his hand. The Mara star-studded whip was already out, directly curling towards the strange arm. That was definitely not a human arm. The Mara star-studded whip was a venerable divine weapon. Although the current Yi Kanshing could not fully unleash its power, it should not be underestimated. Whoosh, whoosh, how could the strange arm escape? It was directly entangled by Yi Sanshing's whip. However, Yi Kanshing did not exert any force. Instead, he followed the withered arm straight into the fog. He wanted to see what was inside the fog. Whoosh! The black tortoise and Yi Sanshing's cooperation could be said to be flawless. Its whole body emitted black light. Carrying Yi Kanshing on its back, it rushed in. Sumo and Yuwuji followed closely behind. Everything happened in an instant. Whoosh! Yi Kanshing flew directly for dozens of feet, and then the scene before him suddenly became clear. The three of them did not expect that the edge of the first layer of the ancient money-mystic realm was actually a layer of fog. From beginning to end, this layer of fog was nearly 10 miles. And at the other end of the withered arm, there was actually a strange monster. The monster was like a giant black spider, crawling on the ground, but it had a human face. It was the face of a beautiful woman, but her eyes seemed to be crying blood. It looked quite ferocious and terrifying. Sumo and the others all frowned. It was hard to say whether it was a human or a beast. Its height was at least 5 or 6 feet, and it was 7 or 8 feet long. It had a total of 8 arms, or rather, long legs like withered branches, supporting its pitch-black body. That withered arm just now was one of its forelimbs. At this moment, Yi Sanshing's Mara star-studded whip was still wrapped around that forelimb. And this was a valley. The entire valley, within a radius of several miles, was covered in blood. Around the Spider-Woman, there were 7 or 8 corpses of 9 nether cultivators. They were all Undying Realm cultivators. From their clothes, there should be Undying Realm cultivators among them, and also guiltless realm cultivators. Because among them, there were black-robed masked men, and grey-robed masked men. However, the corpses of all the cultivators were no longer complete. Headless, severed limbs, and bodies divided into 2. They all seemed to have been tortured to death. And at this moment, one of the Spider-Woman's arms was filling her abdomen with half of a black-robed cultivator's body. There was actually a giant mouth on the Spider-Woman's abdomen. Saliva flowed. It seemed that it had already eaten a lot of cultivators. That scene was truly shocking to the eye. Sumo, Yi Kanshing, and Yuwuji were all peerless powerhouses in their previous lives, but they had rarely seen such a bloody and disgusting scene. Kakik woo woo woo, the Spider-Woman first let out a strange laugh, then seemed to cry. The giant mouth on her abdomen was still chewing, and her other arm had already swept toward Yi Kanshing. Whoosh, spiritual chi fluctuated in the void. The arm could be extended and retracted freely, like a long blade. The power of God burying. Sumo's expression changed. The power attached to each of the Spider-Woman's arms was actually different. With the power of God burying, it was no wonder those Undying Realm cultivators were buried here. Sumo had experienced the battle of God burying back in the Undying City. God burying and Undying were not on the same level. This Spider-Woman was an existence that could kill them in seconds. Be careful. Kill it. Sumo raised her eyebrows. At this moment there was no need to ask. Such an evil beast was definitely not a good one, and it must be eliminated. Yi Sanqing's whip shook slightly and the black light surged. He had already begun to exert force. Humph! Sumo shouted. At the same time, he patted his storage bag, and a giant skeleton flew out. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 426. Roar. The little white pig instantly transformed into its cute form, and directly landed on the skull of the huge, skeletal beast. What Sumo had summoned was, of course, the adult Dracophant Soul Eater. In fact, this was the first time Sumo had used the little white pig skeleton ever since he discovered that it could fight with the adult Dracophant Soul Eater. First, Sumo had many puppets and could not easily use the little white pig. Second, Sumo was still worried that the little white pig's realm was not high enough to achieve the desired effect. However, the little white pig's realm had improved a lot and it always wanted to show that it had a strong desire to fight. Sumo simply gave it a chance. Moreover, it might be a good choice to deal with the Spider-Woman. The Black Tortoise and the Dracophant Soul Eater pounced on the Spider-Woman at the same time. Beast against beast. At the same time, Yi Sanqing's Mara star-studded whip had begun to withdraw. The power of a venerable divine weapon was extraordinary. Yi Sanqing's current realm could be said to be at the mid-stage of Undying. After all, part of the Mara star-studded whip's power had been infused into his body. Reincarnators carried a characteristic of power awakening. Therefore, Yi Sanqing's withdrawal of the whip was absolutely powerful. Black mist rose and sizzled. The Spider-Woman's forelimbs were instantly straightened. Unfortunately, its forelimbs could be long or short. Yi Kanshing exerted a little force, and it actually borrowed Yi Sanqing's strength to sweep towards him. Whoosh, it arrived in an instant. Yi Kanshing did not dare to take it head-on, and could only fly up into the air. At the same time, he shook his hand and the flywheel magic treasure he had used in the dragon trapping abyss flew out again. Chi, the flywheel magic treasure went straight for the Spider-Woman's long limbs. At the same time, the Black Tortoise's long tail was already swinging towards the Spider-Woman. The Black Tortoise was a divine beast of the three realms. Its tail was like a giant python as it smashed towards the Spider-Woman. The Black Tortoise's current level was Divine Burial. Although it was not as strong as his previous self, it could definitely fight the Spider-Woman. The power of Divine Burial pressed down from the sky. Roar! The little white pig fell into the female skeleton and instantly felt like blood was melting into water. The inheritance of the Dracophant soul-devouring beast was not male and female. It was a hermaphrodite. The adult Dracophant soul-devouring beast was dead. Its physical body wouldn't immediately wither away. Instead, it would use up all of its essence blood and give birth to a new life. Therefore, in essence, the skeleton of the adult dragon elephant soul-devouring beast belonged to it. There were no obstacles in their cooperation. Bang! The bone of the Dracophant soul-devouring beast instantly glowed with white light. At that moment it was a living creature with a soul, not just a skeleton. His front claws reached forward and clawed at the Spider-Woman. The Dracophant's soul-devouring beast was dozens of feet tall. Looking down from above, it could even crush a small mountain. Its might was not to be underestimated. It also had the power to bury gods. Sumo and Yuwuji didn't do much. The two of them floated in the air and spread out their divine senses to prevent other evil beasts from appearing. Boom, crack, inside the valley, several sounds reverberated at the same time. Yi Sanqing's flywheel artifact had cut off one of the Spider-Woman's front limbs. The giant tail of the black tortoise and the claw of the Dracophant's soul-devouring beast had knocked the Spider-Woman to the ground. A deep pit was formed in the valley. The Spider-Woman was knocked into the pit. Inside the pit, green water flowed. It was clearly the Spider-Woman's blood. The limb that was cut off by Yi Kanxing instantly turned to ash. Sumo, Yi Kanxing, and Yuwuji all frowned. This seemed a bit too easy. Even if Sumo's side had the advantage in numbers, the Spider-Woman shouldn't have died so easily. The Spider-Woman was an evil spirit with the power to bury gods. Gigi woo woo woo. While Sumo's group was still in a daze, a strange cry came from the bottom of the pit. At the same time, the entire valley shook. The earth shook. Green smoke billowed out from the pit. At the same time, countless squeaking sounds could be heard. In an instant, countless little spiders swarmed out like a tide. Insect tide. In an instant, they filled the entire valley. Black and dense, it made one's heart tremble. There seemed to be no end to these little spiders. Puff, the black tortoise's reaction was the fastest. It instantly grew to the size of half the valley. Then, with a shake of its head, it opened its giant mouth and spat out black water that fell like a waterfall. In an instant, the water flooded the valley. The black water of the black tortoise was actually a type of poison. Otherwise, how could it corrode all the wood in the world? At the same time, the poison could also be used against other spiritual beings. However, the little spiders were like fish in water. Their crawling speed wasn't affected at all. They were like maggots, rushing towards Sumo's group, the black tortoise, and the Dracophant's soul-devouring beast. Moreover, everything in their path was eaten clean, like locusts. Chi-chi-chi, chi-chi, Yuwuji raised her brows and immediately formed a seal. Looking again, the white sand wheel under her feet suddenly spun, forming a giant whirlpool. Then, the endless white sand also surged like a tide. Whoosh, whoosh. The white sand was like the sea, welcoming the insect tide. Black and white battled. The valley was like two oceans crashing into each other. Spiritual energy soared to the sky, like clouds. Sumo's group really didn't expect the Spider Lady to have such a fighting style. The clouds were endless, the white sand was invincible. However, Suemo could see it clearly. Yuwuji was at a disadvantage in terms of cultivation level. She could stop the insect tide for now, but in the long run, she definitely wouldn't be able to. These little spiders came from the Spider Lady, and to destroy these little clones, the only way was to destroy the real body. Not afraid of the poisonous water, then try the divine fire. Sumo patted her storage pouch again. Sumo's treasures were actually all in the tattered cloth pouch. Clang, with a phoenix cry, the black feather god shot up to the sky. Moreover, the moment it flew out, it had already received Sumo's order. The black feather god turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. The red light rose, and at that moment it was like a phoenix bathed in fire. Whoosh! The black feather god opened its beak, and endless divine fire swept across the entire valley. At this time, the black tortoise had already dispersed its black water. The white sand blocked, the divine fire burned. The entire valley was like a furnace. Squeak, squeak, crackle, crackle. Within the black feather god's flames, the sound of shattering could finally be heard. The insect swarm finally showed signs of retreating. But at this time, the deep pit suddenly emitted a myriad of lights, like the rays of the sun, illuminating everything. Whoosh whoosh, whoosh whoosh, chi-chi. The rays didn't fear the black feather god's flames and passed straight through. Most importantly, the rays weren't aimed at Sumo, Yi Kanshing, or Yuwuji. It seemed to scatter endlessly. But Sumo's expression changed, and she knew this wasn't good. Because those weren't ordinary rays, but thousands of spider webs. The spider lady's goal wasn't to attack, but to completely seal off the valley. Kakik, kakik. Today, no one can leave, you're all food on my plate. Kakik. From within the deep pit came a woman's eerie and seductive voice. At the same time, green mist rose, and an enchanting figure gradually appeared. Chapter 427. Green mist rose and gradually transformed. Looking again, there was a green-clothed woman floating in the air. However, she looked a little strange. Her face was the same as the spider-woman from before. Similarly, her eyes were dripping with tears of blood. Her eyes were lifeless. She had the upper body of a normal woman, almost naked. However, below her waist were 4 furry spider-like legs. It was more appropriate to call her Spider-Woman now. She was truly half-human, half-beast. From the looks of it, this spider-demon had been constantly evolving, and now it was one step further than before. "What kind of monster are you?" Sumo shouted. "Monster? Kaki." The spider-demon laughed coldly, but her expression did not change. "I am a peerless powerhouse, I am merely borrowing a body to be reborn. You actually think of me as a monster? Fine, once I eat you, I can completely shed this spider skin. Hand over your lives." Looking again, the spider-demon was actually forming a seal with both hands. Whoosh! The rays of light that she had emitted had almost sealed the entire valley. Sumo and the others seemed to have been trapped in her own absolute space. Green smoke rose and divine fire danced. Blackfeather Shinhong and Yu Wuji had basically eliminated the spider demon's insect swarm. However, following the spider demon's seal, the entire valley instantly darkened, and a viscous liquid gradually appeared in the air. It turned out that the moment the spider's silk flew out, it had already left a mark in the air. Humph humph. Roar, the Dracophant Soul Eater and the Black Tortoise growled. They suddenly realized that they were being held in place by an extremely viscous power. It became extremely difficult for them to move. Clang! Blackfeather Shinhong was also in the air, constantly flapping his wings. At the same time, he spat out a vermilion flame from his mouth. However, the flame was already useless, and it was becoming more and more difficult for him to flap his wings. Blackfeather Shinhong was also almost locked in the air. The 3 divine beasts were being restrained at the same time. Yi Kanshing and Yu Wuji had the same feeling. Yi Kanshing felt his body tighten, as if there was a nameless pressure that was gradually immobilizing him. Divine burial pressure. Yi Sanqing's pupils shrank slightly. Yu Wuji's protective white sand was no longer flowing. They were completely frozen in the void, as if they had been frozen. Yu Wuji had been wearing a veil, but her brows were furrowed. The white sand protection was similar to a white sand cage. What kind of spell did this spider-woman use to be able to imprison her white sand? Sumo was the only one among the 3 who had a calm expression on his face. Sumo stood with her hands behind her back, staring coldly at the spider-woman. However, he did not move, as if he was also imprisoned. Sumo sensed the changes in his surroundings, but he himself was not affected. This was not because Sumo's realm was higher. In fact, Sumo's realm wasn't that high in comparison. The Spider Lady was a true fusion of human and demon in the god burial realm. In terms of realm alone, she could completely crush Sumo and the others. However, at this moment, Sumo felt an indescribable gentle power on his body, as if protecting him. This power originated from the jade pendant that Li Beihan had given him. Kakik, kakik, the spider-woman cackled. "You can't move, right? Watch me enjoy you one by one." As she spoke, the Spider-Woman crawled through the void, heading straight for the Dracophant's soul-devouring beast. Of course, she wasn't going to eat the skeleton. Instead, she flew into the air and took out the little white pig. White and tender, the little guy looked very fragrant. Humph humph. The little white pig hid inside the skull, intending to go on a killing spree. However, it didn't expect this spider monster to be so powerful. Humph humph. The little white pig couldn't move at all, but it bared its teeth and made a ferocious expression. Unfortunately, this definitely couldn't scare the Spider-Woman away. Good, little fellow. I'll chew on you gently later. Kakik, the Spider-Woman cackled. As she spoke, she stretched out her arm and directly lifted the little white pig out. In the next moment, she was about to swallow the little white pig alive. The beautiful woman's face seemed to be about to change. The little white pig's body was also somewhat trembling. Of course, it was afraid. Evil creature. At this moment, Sumo's expression finally changed. A purple-clothed puppet suddenly flew out from his side. A sword ray, headed straight for the Spider-Woman. The power of the divine burial. This change was most likely something the Spider-Woman absolutely didn't expect. She was clear about her spell. She didn't actually seal the opponent's spiritual power, but the opponent's perception. The mucus that her spider silk was attached to was a type of consciousness poison. In reality, whether it was a divine beast or a cultivator, their power was not sealed. However, in their consciousness they thought that they were sealed. It was like a psychological hypnosis spell known as the soul lock technique. Yuwuji's white sand was not sealed by the Spider-Woman, but Yuwuji's own subconscious stopped the white sand. The soul lock technique had been used in several lifetimes, and it was time-tested. Just now, the reaction of Sumo and the others was all within the Spider-Woman's expectations. Therefore, she didn't even think that they would be able to retaliate. Moreover, even if they could retaliate, it would be very difficult to break through the barrier she had set up. However, she was wrong about all of this. She didn't expect Sumo to be completely unaffected, and even more so, she didn't expect the sword that would kill her to be the Reverend King's sword. In that instant, the Spider-Woman's reaction was definitely not slow. The moment the Reverend King's puppet charged at her, she was already on guard. Whoosh, she raised a hand and directly threw the little white pig toward the sword ray. Humph humph. The little white pig that was thrown out wanted nothing more than to bite the Spider-Woman to death. If this sword pierced through it, it would undoubtedly die. Whoosh, fortunately, the Reverend King's puppet was a deity-burying realm existence. Be it in terms of intelligence or swordsmanship, it had reached a higher level. The little white pig flew over, but the Reverend King's puppet had already dodged it in a flash. At the same time, its sword was still aimed at the Spider-Woman. Whoosh whoosh, the Reverend King's sword had once shaken the three realms. Any one of the soulless Taoists was a peerless expert. At this moment, when she saw the Reverend King's sword, the Spider-Woman actually cried out in shock. Reverend King! She never thought that one day, she would see that purple robe and that divine sword again. Reverend King! The Spider-Woman's eyes were bloodshot. Therefore, it was difficult to see the changes in her eyes, but her tone was clearly different. She knew the Reverend King, but the Reverend King's puppet did not remember her. Although the Reverend King's puppet had fused with the ancient golden body, it was still a puppet. It had no memories, so it was not the Reverend King of the past. The Spider-Woman was dazed for a moment. Or rather, she did not even try to block or counterattack. In the infinite worlds there would always be some people that you could not draw your sword, because they were the softest part of your heart. The Spider-Woman never thought that when she met the Reverend King again, she would be neither a human nor a ghost. She could become a monster, but she could not do so in front of him. She wanted to be perfect in his heart forever. Therefore, she did not move. At that moment, she would rather die. Reverend King's sword was cold and heartless. It was invincible. That sword pierced through the Spider-Woman's immortal heart. Chapter 428. Sometimes, death was a form of release. The Spider Lady was half human, half demon, and that was after her evolution. No one knew what it felt like for a former beauty to possess her soul in the body of an ugly spider. Women, especially beautiful women, could live a life worse than death if they lost their beauty. Moreover, the dark days of the Spider Lady seemed to have no end. She once imagined that she could reforge her immortal body and return to the world. She once imagined that she could see her old love again. However, she saw her old love again at a time like this. The Spider Lady cried blood every night and was on the verge of death several times. Between her and death, there was only a straw between them. The appearance of the Adoration King's puppet was the final straw that crushed everything. Poof! King Mu's sword pierced through her immortal heart. What flowed out was golden blood. It was the blood of a cultivator, not a demon. Hee. The Spider Lady's blood-soaked eyes slowly cleared up. It must be said that the Spider Lady was a beautiful woman. Her gaze was like rippling autumn waves, clear and transparent. Her lips curled into a smile, fresh and intoxicating. King Mu. The Spider Lady's smile was very gentle, completely different from before. Her smile was satisfied and sad, with a trace of regret. What a pity! You are not the real King Mu. The Spider Lady stretched out an arm. The arm was as white as the moon. She wanted to use it to gently brush the puppet's face. Unfortunately, her arm stopped in midair. Why? The Spider Lady smiled, as if she had thought it through. After all, that was not the real King Mu. However, the Spider Lady did not regret it. She only needed one reason for her death. Facing this puppet, she had more than enough reason. Please treat him well. The Spider Lady looked at Sumo. Because she knew that this puppet belonged to Sumo. Then, the Spider Lady formed a special seal with her hands. Boom, bang. The scene just now made Sumo, Yi Kanshing, and Yuwuji confused. What was going on? However, the Spider Lady did not give them time to think. Following her spell, her body suddenly emitted a golden light. In an instant, her human body and spider body were completely shattered. However, a wisp of green light condensed between the Spider-Woman's eyebrows and directly shot into the Mu Wang puppet's forehead. King Mu's puppet trembled slightly. Bang! With the death of the Spider-Woman, all the spider silk in the valley lit up and gradually turned into smoke. Sumo furrowed her brows. Just now, that Spider-Woman was extremely vicious, and she swore that she wouldn't let the matter rest. However, she didn't expect that once Mu Wang's puppet appeared, everything would instantly vanish into thin air. Spider knew King Mu. However, Sumo did not know about soulless Taoist's past. When the smoke dissipated, Mu Wang's puppet suddenly knelt on one knee. Wu! Mu Wang's puppet stabbed its sword into the ground. His entire body seemed to be convulsing in extreme pain. It sounded like a person crying, but his voice was really ear-piercing. Because Mu Wang's puppet couldn't speak. Sumo knew that King Mu's puppet was just a puppet. King Mu's puppet was not a cultivator. It only had various battle instincts and awareness, but it did not have absolute intelligence. On this point, King Mu's puppet was far inferior to the puppets he saw at Siyun Manor. It was even inferior to Guiying. Because the almighty cultivators who created these puppets had different goals. King Mu, Tao Yao, Life and Death Man, they were all battle puppets. Even if they fused with the immortal golden body by chance, they still did not have normal intelligence. They could not speak, only Tao Yao could laugh. Love and hate did not exist in their hearts. Originally, they would not cry. However, at this moment, King Mu's puppet's behavior was already very unusual. Sumo did not immediately recall King Mu's puppet. He only watched quietly. He saw the wisp of green light that the Spider-Woman shot into King Mu's forehead. Sumo did not know what it was. However, He was willing to give King Mu's puppet a chance to vent. No matter what it was, it belonged to King Mu's puppet. Sumo understood any kind of extreme and obsession, because Xiao Luo and Murong were both such people. What was wrong with being extreme? So what if it was obsession? Sumo looked at King Mu and the corners of his mouth curled up. Just now, he had admired the Spider-Woman's choice. Sometimes death was for a request. After a while, King Mu's puppet's ear-piercing twitching finally stopped and it gradually calmed down. Then, it stood up and knelt on one knee in front of Sumo. Sumo noticed that there was a tinge of color in King Mu's eyes. At that moment, it could not be said that King Mu had become a real cultivator. However, this puppet must have undergone some changes due to everything that had happened just now. King Mu, if you can recover one day, I will definitely grant you freedom. I will definitely give you freedom. Suemo smiled lightly. Grant you freedom. If Sumo's words were heard by soulless Taoist, it would have caused a huge uproar. At this moment, King Mu's puppet seemed to understand Sumo's words. It knelt on one knee and instantly turned into a ray of light and entered the tattered bag. Everything in the deep valley finally returned to peace. Humph! Roar, clang. The three divine beasts regained their freedom. The cultivator's corpse was long gone. The battle just now had almost melted everything in the valley. Now there was only a barren mountain in the surroundings. Meanwhile, Yi Kanxing looked at Sumo with a complicated expression. This was because he knew King Mu. In the past, Yi Kanxing and Shen Yan worked together to kill the purple-robed cultivator to avenge the annihilation of his family. In fact, the moment the purple-robed puppet appeared, Yi Kanxing recognized it as King Mu's sword. King Mu, Tao Yao, Life and Death Man, and Yi Xingbai had fought with them before. Brother Su, was that really a puppet? Yi Kanxing asked. That's right. He is my puppet. Sumo replied. At the same time, he waved his hand and kept the black feather deity and the dragon elephant soul eater back into the tattered bag. Only the little white pig was left outside. In the past, I killed a very special purple-robed cultivator. Yi Kanxing looked at Sumo and said, the puppet you used just now was almost identical to that cultivator. King Mu? Sumo was stunned. That's right. The King Mu of the Three Realms was known as the Soulless Taoist, Yi Kanxing said. Them? Sumo asked. Yes, them. Back then, there was not a single soul under the purple robe. Yi Kanxing raised an eyebrow. Everything that happened back then was still vivid in his mind. There were at least 3 or 4 souls under the purple robe. They are all peerless almighty beings. 3 or 4 souls. The soulless Taoists? In fact, Sumo had heard about the soulless Taoists many times. However, those were all memories of this life. Xiao Luo's memories of the soulless Taoists did not recover. Sumo looked at Yi Kanxing, his mind recalling everything he had seen in Xiun Villa. In the nighttime mirror of Xiun Villa, he had seen Yi Xingbai. The black tortoise and the Mara star-studded whip were the standard weapons of the Muyun young master. Brother Yi, have you been to a place? What place? Xiun Villa on the chaotic god's mainland. Sumo looked at Yi Kanxing. Chapter 429. Chaotic God's Mainland, Xiun Villa? I've never heard of that place. Yi Kanxing frowned and shook his head. But what? Sumo pressed. My clan used to be in Muyun Villa. Azura Demon Continent, Mu Yun of the Three Realms. Yi Sanxing's eyes glinted. Muyun Villa, Mu Yun of the Three Realms. Back in the day, it was indeed a place to be proud of. Mu Yun of the Three Realms? Sumo's lips curled up. She waved her hand and an image appeared in the air. It was a projection of Sumo's memories. Purple mountains stretched endlessly, enshrouded in purple mist. A villa with an extraordinary aura. A mountain range was shrouded in mist. Many purple mountains surrounded the villa, making it seem even more noble and extraordinary. The most eye-catching thing was the purple clouds in the sky above the ancient palaces. The purple clouds seemed to be special. They condensed and did not disperse. Together, they formed 4 large words that resembled ancient seals, Mu Yun of the 3 realms. Sumo knew that this must be the Moon Villa Yi Kanxing mentioned. However, he didn't know why Yi Wuhui told him it was Si Yun Villa. As expected, when Yi Kanxing saw the image in the sky, his expression changed. Muyun Villa? But that was impossible. He had returned to the Azura Demon Continent's cloud galaxy. However, the entire Muyun Villa had fallen into a bottomless abyss and ceased to exist. Brother Su, is this the Si Yun Villa of the chaotic gods mainland you mentioned? Yi Kanxing asked. That's right. It's deep in the western Liang Mountains of the undying kingdom of the chaotic gods mainland, Sumo said. Is there anyone else inside? Yi Kanxing tried his best to remain calm, because he was wondering if it was a fragment of the 3 realms as well. After the great shattering of the 3 realms, could everything still be reassembled? Was there anyone from the Yi clan still alive? No. Sumo shook her head. But what? This time, it was Yi Kanxing who asked. There are a lot of puppets in that villa. They are all extremely high-level beings. Not only can they speak, but they also have an extremely high level of autonomy. Sumo replied. At the same time, he waved his hand again and projected that part of his memory into the void. That was the gate of the villa. A black-robed young master and a green-robed granny stood at the very front. Behind them were the black and white guards and many other cultivators. Big brother, patriarch? Yi Kanxing raised his eyebrows instantly. He naturally knew Yi Xingmu and Granny Qin Yi. Yi Kanxing also remembered the black guards, the 8 swift swallow guards, and the other clansmen behind them. Brother Su, are they all in the villa? Yes. Sumo nodded. But they are all puppets. None of them are real cultivators. Yi Sanqing's face was solemn. His hand, which was holding the Moro star-studded whip, was slightly pale. Brother Su, how do you know about the so-called Siyun Villa? A friend asked me to retrieve something from inside. I was lucky enough to succeed. Sumo looked at Yi Kanxing and said, that friend was a female cultivator. Her surname was also Yi, and her name was Yi Wuhui. Unfortunately, I don't know where she is now. She said that it was her home. A female cultivator? Yi Wuhui. His home? Yi Kanxing controlled his emotions and frowned. However, in his memory, there was no female cultivator named Yi Wuhui in the Moon Villa. Brother Yi, if you're able to leave the 9 underworlds, the 9 underworlds will be the 9 underworlds. I can take you to Siyun Villa to have a look. Sumo said, that villa is very special. It's quite different when it changes from black to white. It's a promise. Yi Kanxing said solemnly, I will definitely walk out of the 9 nether. Yuwuji didn't say anything from the side and just listened quietly. Sumo's soulless and Taoless puppet had shocked her. Brother Su, are you a pure child? Yuwuji asked suddenly. Pure child? Sumo shook his head and smiled bitterly. He already had some memories of being a pure child. Zio's pure child, I am not. Yuwuji nodded and did not ask further. The soulless and Taoless of the 3 realms was controlled by pure child Yu Shui, Yun Xian. However, Sumo denied that he was a pure child. Don't worry, Palace Lord Yu. Sumo looked at Yuwuji and smiled. No matter who I am, we are all comrades of the 3 realms. If there's any old grudge, we can settle it when we return to the 3 realms. Unfortunately, I don't remember many things. Oh. Yuwuji seemed to be slightly stunned and then smiled. Brother Su, that's right. In Mo Wen's previous life, he only cared about the 3 realms. The Milky Way is gone, we are all wanderers. Naturally, Sumo had exposed her identity when he addressed her as Palace Lord Yu. At this point, Yi Kanxing had finally confirmed Yu Wuji's identity. He quickly bowed and said solemnly, Yi Xingbai greets Palace Lord Yu. Ha ha. Yuwuji shook his head and took off his veil, revealing his beautiful face as he sighed. Pavilion Lord Yi, there's no need to be so courteous. Actually, I'd like to ask, is it possible that the others from Tianxian Pavilion are still around? Yi Kanxing shook his head helplessly. According to the theory of Yizong Realm, the three realms were destroyed. Only the reincarnation mirror, which is the cultivator of the Eternity Realm, could reincarnate. Among the many immortals of Tianxian Pavilion back then, other than me who reached the Eternity Realm due to my family's teachings, only the divine dragon Gon Tianqing was able to enter the Eternity Realm. I'm afraid the others could not reincarnate. Tianxian Pavilion, the number one divine dragon. Yuwuji smiled faintly. Back then, the Azure Fiend said that the divine dragon and black turtle were both dragons and phoenixes among men. However, Pavilion Lord Black Turtle was calm and low-key, while Gon Tianqing's ancient bloodline was half human and half dragon. His style of doing things was somewhat similar to his. The Azure Fiend had always admired the two of you. Divine Dragon 9 Transformations. Yi Kanxing sighed. I believe that the Divine Dragon will definitely reincarnate. However, I don't know where he is. Yizong Realm should be very big. Yes. It's so hard to meet in the vast Yizong Realm. Yuwuji had a feeling in his heart. I've been looking for the Azure Fiend. Unfortunately, he's nowhere to be found. The Azure Fiend Pavilion Lord is very calm. He must be in some corner of Yizong Realm. Haha. Sumo listened to the two reminiscing and felt a little emotional. The heavenly Tao has reincarnation, which is to give us a chance. Let's leave the valley first. If everything goes well, I can try to help you walk out of the 9 underworlds. Yi Kanxing and Yuwuji nodded. After the battle just now, the relationship between the three of them had taken a step closer. Now, other than Sumo's identity, Yi Kanxing and Yuwuji's identities had been revealed. 3 realms companion. Sometimes this world was like this. Who would have thought that the Devil's Son, Xiao Luo, would one day fight side by side with Yi Xingbai and Yuqimu? Sumo remembered that in the 3 realms, he had wanted to use Yuqimu to keep the Azure Fiend in check many times. Now, Sumo wanted to recover all his memories the most. Then, everything would be clearer. As for Yi Kanxing and Yuwuji, they both wanted to walk out of the 9 underworlds and find what they wanted. The 3 of them had their own thoughts, but their goal was the same. Thus, they followed the valley and walked towards the mountain pass on the other side. After several kilometers, the view before them suddenly opened up. Outside the valley, a large lake appeared in front of them. The blue waves were boundless, and the water level was as flat as a mirror. Around the large lake, there were 8 valley entrances, and in front of each valley, there was a 9 underworlds cultivator sitting cross-legged. Undead Realm Great Circle. The 9 underworlds cultivators here had all gone through great waves to reach this place. Chapter 430. The lake was like a mirror, extremely magnificent. Inside the ancient coin's secret realm, the sky was always dark, gloomy, and almost no light could be seen. As for the location of this large lake, the scenery of the lake and the mountains was quite pleasant. Sumo and the other 2 stood outside the valley and looked around, only to realize that the valley they passed through was just one of the passages. Around the lake, there were 8 directions, each corresponding to a valley entrance. And in front of each valley entrance, there were several cultivators. There were at least 3 or 4 people, and at most 6 or 7 people. Most of them were at the undead realm. More than 30 cultivators, only 5 or 6 were at the late undead realm. However, many of the cultivators were injured. Needless to say, Sumo and the other 2 thought of their own experience. Most likely all the cultivators who reached this place had experienced a battle. Looking at the lineup, Sumo and the other 2 were the weakest. In fact, if it weren't for Mu Wang's puppet, Sumo and the others would not have passed through the valley so easily. How could an undead realm cultivator deal with a god-burying realm monster so casually? At this time, when Sumo and the other two appeared, they naturally attracted the attention of other cultivators. Sumo and the other two did not have high realms. Now, they did not have to deliberately suppress their realms. Sumo was at the middle undead realm, Yi Kansheng was also at the middle undead realm, and Yuwuji was at the late undead realm. This was their true realm. Even so, compared to the cultivators of the other 7 parties, they still did not have any advantage. However, there was not a trace of injury on their bodies. This was a bit special. There was a touch of surprise in the eyes of other cultivators. Sumo, Yi Kansheng, and Yuwuji were also looking at other cultivators. Moreover, they immediately found that the whole lake actually showed the shape of the 8 trigrams. Each of the 8 valleys occupied a gate. Sumo glanced around, then smiled bitterly. Open, rest, life, pain, stop, view, death, shock, 8 gates. We are in the shock gate, cold and murderous, which is the ominous gate, not a good omen. This is not good. Fortunately, we are not at the death gate. Yi Wuji laughed. That death gate is filled with people from the 9 Jade Kuan city. They actually came from the Kuan Palace? The people from the Purple Jade Pavilion aren't too bad. They're standing at the healing gate. Yi Wuji had a fairly good understanding of the situation in the Netherworld realm. Sumo and Yuwuji both looked at the 2 directions Yi Kansheng pointed out. There were a total of 5 cultivators at the entrance of the Death Gate. The leader was a middle-aged male cultivator at the Great Circle of the Undead Realm. The male cultivator was dressed in a brocade robe, and his face was as beautiful as jade. However, his cheekbones were prominent and the corners of his eyes drooped. It was a sinister appearance. Behind him stood 2 men and 2 women, a total of 4 old men. They were all at the Great Circle of the Undead Realm. Except for the middle-aged male cultivator in the lead, all of them had bloodstains on their bodies. Jade Sun City was not an immortal city of the Qian Palace tribe. This was the first time Sumo had heard of it. The 5 great perfection-level undead realm experts were considered the strongest among these 8 groups. As for Healing Sect, there were 4 cultivators there. The leader was a red-robed old woman at the peak of the undead realm. She had a head full of white hair and wrinkles. She was leaning on a dark green walking stick. Behind her were 3 middle-aged male cultivators. Their temperament was quite refined, and they were all wearing green robes. Their realm was at the late stage of the undead realm. Their bodies were almost the same as Sumo's group of 3, without any injuries. The medicinal pills of the Purple Jade Pavilion are unparalleled in the Netherworld. Therefore, although his realm is not the highest, his combat power is definitely not low. Yi Kansheng saw the doubt in Sumo's eyes and explained, the medicinal pills of the Purple Jade Pavilion are enough to double their combat power. The undead. The Black Spirit Pavilion. Sumo nodded and then looked at the Life Gate and the Pain Gate. This was the only thing that Sumo was certain of among the other 7 forces. On the side of the undead, there were 7 cultivators in total. They were all wearing black robes and black and white masks. The 7 cultivators were all at the peak of the undead realm. This was the most powerful force among them. The 7 of them were all sitting cross-legged at the entrance of the valley, and each of them occupied a very special position. It seemed to be a formation. It seems that the undead faction has a deep foundation and is quite powerful, Sumo said with a smile. A centipede dies, but it doesn't fall down. Yi Kansheng sneered. The entire Netherworld realm is currently under the control of the undead faction. However, it's getting harder and harder for them to continue. The only problem is that the central palace is still firmly in their hands. There were only 4 cultivators in the Black Spirit Pavilion. Gray robes, red mask. 3 at the peak of the undead realm, and 1 at the late stage. They all had injuries on their bodies, and it seemed that they had suffered heavy losses. At this time, they were also sitting cross-legged, adjusting their breathing and healing their injuries. There seemed to be a small barrier in front of them. The opening gate, the Shang gate, the stop gate, and the view gate all had cultivators, and each of them had their own unique characteristic. However, Sumo had never seen any of them before. However, the cultivators who opened the door attracted Sumo's attention. That was because they were all female cultivators. Moreover, each of those female cultivators was more charming and enchanting than the last. The leader of the 6 female cultivators was at the peak of the undead realm. The rest were all at the late stage of the undead realm. They all looked to be in their 20s, and each of them was as beautiful and charming as a peach. The Bliss Palace? Sumo furrowed her brows. She had heard from Li Beihan that there was also a Bliss Palace in the Netherworld realm. That's right. Yuwuji smiled faintly. The Bliss Palace of the Netherworld. That's a group of vicious beauties. This time, the secret realm of the ancient money is really a gathering of geniuses. What are they waiting for? Sumo couldn't help but ask. From the looks of it, this should be the core position of the first stage. Yi Kanxing glanced around. They seem to be waiting for something in this big lake. I wonder what's in this big lake, Yuwuji said. This is a rather strange lake. Sumo furrowed her brows. The big lake was calm and tranquil, but it was deep and bottomless. Sumo felt that this lake was very special. In theory, the core of the first stage of the secret realm was definitely not ordinary. Therefore, the 3 of them sat cross-legged like the other cultivators. It was a very interesting scene. 8 entrances, 8 groups of people, each minding their own business and sitting in their respective positions. Sumo didn't know what would appear. However, it wasn't the first time many of the cultivators here had come to the first stage. The reason they were waiting quietly was because they were all waiting for the reflection of the 8 trigrams lake to appear. The 8 trigrams lake was the name of this big lake, and there were many secrets hidden in its reflection. For a whole 7 days, none of the cultivators moved. Not only did they not move, but no other cultivators appeared in the 8 passages either. It seemed that all the experts of the secret realm of the ancient money were gathered here. Another day passed. Counting with one's fingers, this was the 9th day since Sumo and the rest entered the ancient money secret realm. This bit of time was nothing to cultivators who easily counted hundreds of years. The 8 trigrams lake was as quiet as before. At this time, the white camel who had been following behind Sumo and the other 2 narrowed his eyes and watched everything. Whoosh! Suddenly, a water wheel appeared in the middle of the 8 trigrams lake. Then, 8 rays of light spread out, and the whole lake was instantly divided into 8 areas. The water was sparkling, and the colorful waves rippled. The whole lake was extremely strange. At this time, Sumo frowned, because she saw the reflection of a city. Chapter 431. It was majestic and incomparably magnificent. As far as Sumo could remember, he had never seen a city like that. Ancient and majestic. Although it was only the shadow of a city, and it rippled with the lake, no one could deny the shock it brought to them. Whoosh! The lake rippled like the waves of the sea. At the same time, an extremely dense spirit chi appeared around the entire 8 trigrams lake. The density of the spirit chi was unimaginable. In Sumo's opinion, the density of the spirit chi at that moment even exceeded the density of the spirit chi in her soul storage altar cave abode. Some of the 9 underworld's cultivators were already intoxicated, their eyes shining. It was an irresistible temptation. But what city was that? The city of Tianfu. The expression of the undying great perfection, undying realm leader changed slightly. The cultivators in charge of the other groups were also shocked. Could the legend be true? There had always been a saying among the high-level cultivators of the 9 underworlds. The 9 underworlds were the reflection of the Tianfu. However, that legend was a mix of truth and falsehood. Only the true ruler of the 9th Nether City would know the truth of everything. Unlike the shock in the eyes of the other 9 underworld's cultivators, Yi Kanxing and Yuwuji looked at each other. because they knew this city. This was especially true for Yuwuji, as he understood the city better. Although she had never been inside, she had seen it with her own eyes. Above was the Tianfu, below was the 9 underworlds. Of course, she had heard of this saying. However, in her previous life, in the desolate sea divine region, she often heard about the city. In the desolate sea divine region, there is a city, Zio, that appears once in 1,000 years, reincarnating immortal. Zio City was a divine city to the desolate sea divine region. Zio City was half a heavenly coffin. Back then, Chi had fallen, and Amu had fought against the Nether Sovereign and gathered the 9 coffins. Zio City had long become a part of the karma roulette. Later, when Amu dispersed the karma, there used to be a star in the 3 realms galaxy called Zio. All the survivors of Zio City lived there. Uchiomu and Qing Mozi had been to that star under Xing Fei's lead. Therefore, Zio City no longer existed. However, how could there be a reflection of Zio City in the secret realm of the ancient coin? Tianfu City. Besides, both Yi Kanxing and Yuwuji had heard what the Netherworld cultivators had said. Tianfu City was Zio City? At this moment, Sumo noticed the change in Yi Kanxing and Yuwuji's eyes. What city is this? Have you met before? Sumo asked. Yi Kanxing and Yuwuji had always been curious about Sumo's identity. After hearing Sumo's words, they couldn't help but shake their heads and smile bitterly. How could a mighty expert of the eternal realm in the 3 realms galaxy not know of Zio City? They really believed Sumo's words. Sumo's memory was definitely incomplete. She wasn't hiding anything on purpose. That's Zio City. Yuwuji smiled faintly. Sumo, you know me. Then, even if you haven't really seen Zio City, you should at least have heard of it. Zio City? Sumo's expression changed slightly. How could he not know Zio City? The demise of Tai Huang actually originated from Zio. However, those netherworld cultivators had clearly said Tianfu City. What was going on? The 3 realms were shattered. Zio City was long gone. Zio's demise happened before the galaxy. Ha! Yi Kanxing smiled bitterly. None of them could explain all this. Could it be that the heavenly floating city was also a star river fragment? Just as the 3 of them were confused, the 8 trigrams lake had changed again. Whoosh! A huge vortex suddenly appeared in the center of the 8 trigrams lake, and then layers of white waves rose from the vortex. North, south, east, and west, white waves surged up like lotus flowers. Above it, 4 cultivators gradually materialized, 3 men and 1 woman. It was a young man in gray, dressed in a long gray robe. His face was gray as well, and his expression was cold and unfriendly. He held an immortal sword in his hand. The immortal sword was unusually long, nearly 5 feet long. Its gray scabbard was as smooth as snow, and its white tassel hung low at the end. South. It was also a man, tall and majestic. His red robe was stained with blood. On his red robe was embroidered a vivid 5-clawed black dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. The male cultivator's eyes were bright, and he looked heroic. He was like a god of war, inviolable. West. It was a man in a white robe. He was handsome, in high spirits, and looked to be about 26 or 27 years old. His long silver hair fell to his waist, swaying with the wind, each strand shining. He looked indescribably elegant. The man in white robe's eyes were as clear as the stars. He had the confidence and composure of someone who looked down on the world. North. That was the only female cultivator. She was dressed in a long black dress, and her figure was slender. Her shoulders were bare, and her breasts were slightly exposed. Only a few black ribbons were circling her. Her skin was as white as snow, and she was as smooth as pearls. She was faintly discernible, and her appearance was enough to shake people's souls. There was a 5 phoenixes facing the sun hairpin on her head, and it was adorned with pearls that glittered. Although the female cultivator was as beautiful as a flower, her expression was cold, and her beautiful eyes were full of murderous intent. She was definitely someone who had been in a high position for a long time, and she was in charge of killing. As soon as the four of them appeared, the expressions of all the underworld cultivators changed. Their expressions changed not because of anything else, but because the four cultivators were emitting extremely powerful auras. Cultivators of the divine burial realm? Or cultivators of the breaking world? Those were existences that the cultivators at the peak of the undying realm could not hope to reach. Breaking world. At that moment, Sumo was quite certain. Although he did not have the ability to see through the breaking world, he could sense that their auras were similar to Miao Long Er's. However, at that moment, Sumo, Yi Kanshing, and Yu Wuji looked worse than the cultivators of the underworld. However, they were not intimidated by the 3 men and 1 woman's realm, but by their appearance, because they knew or guessed who those 4 people were. Zio City had once been the emissaries of the Dragon and Phoenix clans, Zhan Long, Xing Fei, Jin Feng, and Lang Wu. Back in the 3 realms, Zhan Long, one of the 4 holy emissaries, was the first to die under Amu's fiend coffin, while Xing Fei left Zio early on. Only Jin Feng and Lang Wu were trapped in Zio City. Later on, they all lived on Zio Planet. Unfortunately, Jin Feng and Lang Wu did not reach the Eternal Realm. The galaxy was broken, and Zio Planet was not spared. Xing Fei. At that moment, Yuchiamu's voice trembled slightly. Back then, she had seen Azure Demon and Xing Fei disappear with her own eyes. But now, why was Xing Fei standing here as an emissary of Zio City? They are not human. Sumo's eyes instantly turned black. It was Xiao Luo's demonic eye technique. What? Yi Kanshing and Yu Wuji were stunned. They are puppets, Sumo said in a low voice. Puppets? Yi Kanshing and Yu Wuji dared not believe it. Of course, they had seen puppets before. However, whether it was in their past or present lives, they had never seen such lifelike puppets. They were obviously living people because even their aura was the same. They had just seen Mu Wang's puppets. However, compared to the 4 Zio emissaries before them, they were not on the same level at all. At this time, the 4 emissaries of Zio had already made their move. Their movements were not big, and could even be said to be very gentle. The lake was like a tide, and they stepped lightly on the waves as they moved outward. The pressure of breaking boundaries spread out instantly. In fact, they did not need to do anything else. Once the pressure was released, all the cultivators around the 8 trigrams lake had to submit. It was an unstoppable presence. Looking again, the 4 emissaries raised their hands slightly, each hand corresponding to a region. Their fingertips emitted wisps of strange purple light. Be careful! Danger! Sumo shouted, seal your 5 senses. However, his words were too late. Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm. Chapter 432. The rays of purple glints seemed to be scattered but were extremely precise. 8 directions, 8 doors. Several rays of purple glints shot towards them, corresponding to the number of cultivators there. 8 doors. Opening, rest, life, pain, stop, view, death, and shock. Theoretically, as long as they were in a good position, there would be people who could escape. However, to these cultivators, there were doors of death everywhere. They were powerless to resist. Their fates were in the hands of the 4 envoys of Zio. However, the moment the 4 envoys of Zio attacked, the 9 underworld's cultivators did not realize the danger at all. The abundant spiritual chi was intoxicating, the lively purple glints were warm. To begin with, they had been imprisoned there. Everything was like a momentary daze, or perhaps they had entered the illusory world of 8 trigrams lake. At this moment, the 4 envoys of Zio stood calmly above the lake, their expressions unchanged. One end of the purple glints came from their palms while the other end was connected to the brows of many cultivators. It was an extremely peculiar scene. Actually, the 4 envoys of Zio were the real puppet. However, in the current situation, they had become the masters while the cultivators who had entered 8 trigrams lake had become their puppets instead. It was a form of reverse control. It was a pity that the cultivators who could enter this place were the cream of the crop. Those who could not enter would never be able to witness this scene. This was the biggest secret of the ancient coin realm. The ancient coin realm was a trap. The many temptations on the periphery were all for the sake of the core of this realm. At this moment, the 9 underworld's cultivators seemed to be frozen. Their eyes were filled with confusion, as if they did not know what was happening. All of them had entered an illusory state. Soul cleansing! The 4 envoys of Zio exclaimed softly almost at the same time. The purple glint began to dance gently. The eyes of the 9 underworld's cultivators began to turn gray. At this moment, there was a ray of purple glint between Sumo's brows. On the surface, it looked as if the purple glint had entered his consciousness. In reality, however, Sumo's mind was clear. Just as the purple glint was about to invade Sumo, Sumo had already sealed off his 5 senses. At the same time, the black fragment on the 9 dragons' deity's dais in his Dan sea instantly lit up. A ray of black light appeared and blocked the purple ray. Sumo was a unique existence. He wasn't a so-called netherworld cultivator. He came from the Pure Land continent. The one that corresponded to Sumo was Xing Fei's puppet. He instantly noticed the abnormality and couldn't help but curl his lip. That was not an expression that a puppet should have. If it weren't for Sumo's special devil sense and his high attainments in the art of puppetry, he wouldn't have noticed that there were 4 puppets in front of him. Xing Fei's puppet glanced at Sumo and Yuwuji, and its eyes moved slightly. Because both of them were very strange. Xing Fei's puppet was the same as the puppets in Si Yun Villa. They were puppets with extremely high intelligence. Chi-Chi, as soon as Xing Fei's puppet approached him, all of his purple glints were put in one hand. His other hand waved in the air, emitting a white light. The white light turned into sword energy and stabbed at Sumo and Yuwuji. Because neither of them was controlled by the purple glints. On Sumo's body, there seemed to be a strange treasure, and on Yuwuji's forehead, there was a ray of green light. The azure light protected Yuwuji's divine sense, preventing it from being hurt. However, the white light of Xing Fei's puppet contained the power to break the world. In fact, any one of its powers wasn't something that Sumo and Yuwuji could resist. There was the god-burying state between the undying and the breaking world. Ha ha! Xing Fei's smile was even wider. It had been a long time since he had met a cultivator who was worthy of his second attack. It was indeed lonely at the bottom of the 8 trigrams lake. In the eyes of Xing Fei's puppet, he wasn't a puppet at all. He was a real cultivator. Only a cultivator appeared at the 8 trigrams lake every 100 years. It was indeed a bit boring. The white light was extremely powerful. Sumo couldn't move at all. Even though his soul consciousness wasn't affected, his body was also imprisoned. After all, he was only at the undying state. At this moment, seeing the white light flying towards him, Sumo had only one thought. Whoosh! Other treasures might not be able to resist the power of the breaking world. So, Sumo took out what he thought was the most powerful defensive treasure, the White Lotus Throne. The White Lotus Throne was a gift from the mysterious old lady White Fox on the Bone Land. From the Bone Land to the chaotic Godland, Sumo had used it once when crossing the Sky Ditch. After that, he hadn't used it again. However, it was indeed a defensive type of magic treasure. Boom, crack, the white sword light of Xing Fei's puppet hit Sumo's Lotus Throne. In an instant, thousands of rays of light suddenly collapsed. The lights fell like rain, creating countless ripples on the surface of the 8 trigrams lake. Looking again, the Lotus Throne supported Sumo, and it even blocked the pressure of Xing Fei's puppet. Xing Fei's silver hair slightly rose, and he frowned at the same time. Reincarnation level magical treasure. A cultivator in the undying state actually had a reincarnation level magical treasure? This was something he absolutely didn't expect. In the entire netherworld realm, there was probably no reincarnation level magical treasure. What shocked Xing Fei's puppet even more was yet to come. In any case, Suemo had used a magic treasure to block his attack, so he could still accept it. However, his other white sword light was easily blocked by Yuwuji. Yuwuji's face was ice-cold. From her point of view, the puppet in front of her was simply a blasphemy to Xing Fei. Yuwuji wasn't imprisoned at all. In this aspect, she was even more powerful than Sumo. No one could understand how she did it. Destroy! Yuwuji raised her eyebrows. Looking again, the green light between her eyebrows instantly turned into a vortex. Sizzle! The purple light melted, and the white light also disappeared in the green vortex. Oh! Xing Fei's face changed slightly. At this time, the other three messengers didn't encounter any obstacles. All the cultivators of the netherworld were under their control, and they even started to wash their souls. They were also stunned when they saw what happened to Sumo. A cultivator of the netherworld could actually dissolve the sword light of Xing Fei's puppet? At this time, a murderous look flashed in the eyes of Xing Fei's puppet. Actually, they usually wouldn't kill the cultivators who reached the 8 trigrams lake, because they were all elites of the netherworld. Cultivators who weren't strong enough were already blocked outside the valley. However, Sumo and Yuwuji successfully angered Xing Fei's puppet. Kill! Instantly, a cruel red light flashed in the eyes of Xing Fei's puppet. That kind of look would never appear in the eyes of the real Xing Fei. Heavenly punishment. Xing Fei was a rare reincarnator in the 3 realms. He had a deeper and more thorough understanding of compassion, love, and hate, as well as life and death. The Azure Demon was always calm and collected. Xing Fei, on the other hand, abhorred evil and had great love in his heart. Yuwuji's lips curled up. Azure Demon and Xing Fei definitely wouldn't want to see this puppet. Kill! Yuwuji's face suddenly turned cold and she shouted. The green light between her eyebrows instantly condensed into a celestial sword. The sword light was exactly like the clear flow sword back then. She wanted to kill evil for Xing Fei. Chapter 433. The green light turned into a sword that resembled a clear stream. Yuwuji's sword really didn't hold anything back. It could be said that it was her strongest sword. The green light was also her greatest source of confidence. It was the chi of the divine soul that Qing Mozi had implanted into her body. The eternal realm. It was definitely a top-notch existence in the 3 realms galaxy. Yuchiomu's cultivation base was actually very low. She was able to reincarnate because of the power that Qing Mozi had given her. Even in the reincarnation cycle, the green light had never dissipated. However, the green light could not be used indefinitely. It needed Yuwuji's nourishment to ensure her safety at critical moments. Today, if they encountered Xing Fei's puppet, Yuwuji would never use the green light. The power of reincarnation. At this time, someone had already recognized the power of the green light. In fact, in the valley that Sumo and the others had passed through, Camel had been standing with his back hunched. Everything that had happened just now was within his observation. When the 4 Zio envoys came out of the 8 trigrams lake, his eyes were already narrowed. Soul cleansing? The core of the secret realm of the ancient coin was indeed strange. Were they going to turn all the top cultivators of the 9 serenities into puppets? Camel pondered. At this time, as soon as Yuwuji's green light appeared, his expression suddenly changed. It was the power of reincarnation, and it was the ultimate power of reincarnation. According to the level of the 3 realms, that power was at least at the pinnacle of the eternal realm. What a powerful female cultivator! Camel thought. He did not know much about the 3 realms, but the power of the reincarnators of the 3 realms was indeed beyond his imagination. Bai Camel smiled bitterly in his heart. Was it unnecessary for him to come? Swoosh, boom. While Bai Camel was slightly stunned, Yuwuji's green light sword had already pierced through the body of Xing Fei's puppet. Of course, a puppet did not have an immortal heart. However, the green light sword was accompanied by the power of reincarnation. Xing Fei's puppet had wanted to kill Yuwuji. However, Yuwuji did not give him a chance at all. When the cyan light pierced through its heart, Xing Fei's puppet couldn't believe that it was real. An undead realm could actually hurt him? The red glow in his eyes instantly dimmed. In fact, everything he had was just a disguise. Because he wasn't Xing Fei at all. He was a puppet. The sword pierced through the heart. Boom! Xing Fei's puppet instantly exploded. At that moment, it was as if he had self-destructed and shattered into pieces. In fact, that was the power of the green light. Countless fragments landed in the 8 trigrams lake. The puppet's body was like pieces of porcelain, smooth and shiny. Then, it gradually sank into the 8 trigrams lake without a trace of blood. One move, world destroyer. Then, the green light instantly flew back between Yuwuji's eyebrows. However, Yuwuji's face was slightly pale. It seemed that activating that green light consumed a lot of her energy. This caused Sumo to feel a little frightened, and the other 3 emissaries were incomparably shocked. An undying cultivator killing a break world? That was impossible. Sumo definitely couldn't do that. However, it really happened. At the moment when Xing Fei's puppet was destroyed, the purple light he emitted was naturally broken. The soul cleansing technique was not completed yet. Xing Fei's puppet had just controlled the shock gate and the death gate. On one side was Sumo, and on the other side were the 5 cultivators of Jade Kuan City. At that moment, when Jin Feng's puppet saw this, she waved one hand and instantly emitted 5 purple light. They directly locked the 5 cultivators of Jade Kuan City on the death gate and then continued to soul cleansing. That was their main goal. However, neither Sumo nor Yuwuji were controlled. Therefore, when the purple light between Yi Sansheng's eyebrows suddenly broke, Sumo raised one hand and directly pulled him onto her lotus throne. The white lotus throne could isolate the pressure of World Destroyer. It was a little too late for Jin Feng to control the 3 of them. At that moment, Lang Wu and Zhan Long, of course, couldn't sit back and watch. They had already made their moves at the same time. They were all puppets with high-level spiritual intelligence. The fact that Yuwuji killed Xing Fei shocked them greatly. They had never met such an opponent in tens of thousands of years. In the ancient money-secret realm, they were the sky, they were the gods. However, it seemed like the sky was going to be overturned this time. Therefore, they chose to attack at the same time. They controlled the purple light with one hand and used the other to fight the enemy. The sword in Lang Wu's hand was already out of its sheath. The white bone sword turned into a white light and went straight to Yuwuji. Zhan Long took out the drunk blood dragon. It was a long, blood-red knife with a long handle. Its target was Sumo. The white bone sword, the drunk blood dragon, was the divine weapon of Lang Wu and Zhan Long back then. At that moment, Yuwuji was really puzzled. Why were the divine weapons in their hands exactly the same as the divine weapons in the past? Even their aura was exactly the same? Puppets could be made. Could it be that divine weapons could also be made? Yuwuji didn't even dare to imagine what would have happened if Xing Fei's puppet had used the clear current sword. The clear current sword was one of the 3 realms' divine swords. The white bone sword and the drunk blood dragon could not compare to it. Just now, Xing Fei's puppet had the clear current sword in its hand. She probably wouldn't have been able to do it so easily. However, this also made Yuwuji feel a bit more at ease. It seemed like they couldn't easily copy a venerable divine weapon. Swoosh! Each sword and knife carried an endless murderous aura. Sumo reacted quickly and slapped her storage bag. Woo roar! Something flew out of the tattered bag. What she took out was none other than the desolate soul beast puppet from the Battle of the Undying City. That was a god-burying soul beast puppet. It was very powerful. In fact, the reason Sumo took it out was very simple. It was because she didn't have any confidence against a break-world cultivator. The other puppets were either useless or damaged. Sumo didn't want to use them. The most suitable one was this desolate soul beast puppet. Its level was high enough. At a critical moment she could use it. Desolate soul beast. Yi Qianxing couldn't help but scream. However, he could also tell that it was a puppet. Even so, he was still very shocked. After all, the desolate soul beast was Amu's mount. Roar, roar. The desolate soul beast puppet was very powerful. It was a shame it wasn't a real desolate soul beast. It was facing a break-world puppet. Zhanlong's drunk blood dragon had break-world power. It struck the sky and cut off one of the desolate soul beast's wings. Whoosh! At the same time, the desolate soul beast's mouth spat out a special flame. But it was a shame. Zhanlong stamped his feet. Whoosh! The lake water was like a wave. It rolled up dozens of feet and extinguished the flame. The 8 trigrams lake water also contained break-world power. Desolate soul resurrection beast. The Zhanlong puppet didn't immediately attack. It paused and spoke to Sumo. Who are you? Why do you have a resurrection beast? Resurrection beast? Sumo frowned. Her heart jumped. That was because the desolate soul beast puppet's master, the purple-robed cultivator, had called himself a resurrection beast puppet. I killed its master, Sumo calmly said. It is my trophy. Trophy? You killed the 7 ultimate fire god? Ha! Zhanlong didn't seem to believe it, but his lips curled up. His smile was a bit strange. At that moment, Lang Wu's sword was between Yu Wuji's eyebrows. Feng Yun reading net. Chapter 434. The white bone sword was definitely a divine weapon. Lang Wu was a middle-stage break-world puppet. However, the current situation was extremely strange. The sword was indeed pressed against the space between Yu Wuji's eyebrows. However, the area between Yu Wuji's eyebrows was still protected by that green light. However, the green light did not shoot out. However, Lang Wu's expression did not look too good. From an outsider's point of view, his sword was pressed against the space between Yu Wuji's eyebrows. It seemed like he could end Yu Wuji's life with just a burst of spiritual energy. But in reality, Lang Wu's sword had been attracted by Yu Wuji's green light and could not be pulled back at all. The corners of Yu Wuji's mouth curled up. She was actually accumulating power. Killing Xing Fei's puppet had consumed too much of her power. Otherwise, she would have been able to kill Lang Wu's puppet with a flash of green light. However, at this moment, she had to protect herself first, and only then could she injure the enemy. Thus, she and the puppet Lang Wu fell into a strange stalemate. At this moment, Sumo and Yi Qianxing couldn't care less about Yu Wuji. Zhanlong's aura was definitely above theirs. After a short conversation, Zhanlong did not intend to let go of Sumo and Yi Qianxing. The appearance of the desolate soul puppet only made him pay more attention to Sumo. This was because he knew that the puppet resurrection was not ordinary. Soulless Taoist, any one of them was an existence that could dominate the 3 realms. Unexpectedly, the 7 Ends flame god had died to this black-clad cultivator. That was incredible. Thus, Zhanlong's second slash was even more ferocious. Drinking the blood dragon roared and slashed down again. The shocking blade aura was like a blood sun being stretched out. The break world power made the 8 trigrams lake look like a sea with waves that were 100,000 feet high. Whoosh, whoosh, Sumo's desolate soul beast puppet had not completely lost its combat strength. This was the benefit of a puppet. Even if one of its wings was broken, it would still be fearless. Woo, roar, goodbye. The desolate soul beast puppet had clouds under its feet. Suddenly, it charged towards the saber radiance. But this time, it avoided its relatively weak wings. Instead, its long tail transformed into a green heavenly hook that swept towards the hilt of the drunk-on-blood dragon. It should be said that the desolate soul beast puppet had made the best response in this disadvantageous situation. After all, it was one realm lower. However, Zhanlong's saber technique was extremely strange. Who, drinking the blood dragon, suddenly disappeared and reappeared in the air. In an instant, it avoided the desolate soul beast's heaven hook leopard tail. At the same time, it cut down towards Famine's head. Even if it was a puppet, a headless puppet was practically useless. Kacha. Sumo did not know what material her desolate soul beast puppet was made of. However, the material of a god-burying puppet would definitely not be ordinary. However, under Zhanlong's drink of the blood dragon, it was like a clay doll. With a flash of red light, the desolate soul beast was beheaded. However, the moment the desolate soul beast's head was cut off, thousands of swords rained down from its neck. This should be a mechanism left behind by the creator. The rain of swords was actually a god-burying talisman. The power of this attack was immense. Chi-chi boom boom, a loud noise shook the sky. Thousands of swords rained down on Zhanlong. This was not what Zhanlong's puppet had expected. Although it was a break-world puppet, the close-range and concentrated talisman attacks still created a lot of trouble for it. Hua Zhanlong used the same trick again. He stirred up the lake, but the spirit talismans exploded. The god-burying and undying powers were a mess in the air. There were even several spiritual talismans that exploded around Zhanlong. Of course, as a break-world cultivator, Zhanlong would not die. However, he did not expect himself to be in such a panic. His red robe had been blown to pieces. What he did not expect was for the lotus seat under Sumo's feet to move forward. Chi-chi, there was the sound of breaking air. Sumo had already summoned a broken bamboo pole. The broken bamboo pole looked normal, but it gave Zhanlong a very special feeling. At the same time, Yi Kanxing made his move. The white lotus seat could block the pressure. Yi Kanxing shook his hand. The Devil Luo's star-studded whip turned into an endless black dragon. It went for Zhanlong's neck. There was a gap between them. However, if Sumo and Yi Kanxing did not make a move, they would die. If they took the initiative to attack, they might have a chance to live. The broken bamboo pole and the Devil Luo's star-studded whip were not ordinary things. Zhanlong could not help but raise his eyebrows. These two cultivators were more difficult to deal with than he had expected. However, he did not want to be entangled anymore. Their main task was to wash their souls. Now, Xing Fei's puppet had fallen. He and Lang Wu were both distracted. Only Jin Feng was doing her best to wash her soul. Of course, that was not possible. So, Zhanlong's face looked gloomy. Suddenly, he used Drunk on Blood Dragon in the air to block the broken bamboo pole and the Devil Luo's star-studded whip. His advantage in terms of realm was too big. At the same time, Zhanlong's puppet's red robe was fluttering. His hands quickly formed a seal. 8 trigrams shock gate change. Zhanlong's break-world power suddenly increased. Looking again, the color of the entire 8 trigrams lake was changing. Open, rest, life, pain, stop, view, death, shock, 8 gates. In fact, there was life and death, but the changes were endless. However, as Zhanlong's puppet's spell, there was a sudden change. Boom, boom. Sumo, Yi Kanxing, and Yuwuji all felt that the valley behind them was gradually closing. It was the same in the other 7 directions. The water of the 8 trigrams lake gradually turned black. The entire area of the 8 trigrams lake was closing little by little. In the void, there were thick clouds in an instant. At this moment, it was as if the world had changed. The cold wind was blowing, and it was bone-chilling. The power of immortality filled the surroundings. Sumo frowned and said, 8 trigrams change formation, everywhere is a dead place. You guys go. Don't worry about me. At this time, the killing intent in Yuwuji's eyes reappeared. I can kill one more person. After saying that, the blue light between Yu Wuji's eyebrows suddenly lit up again. In an instant, the whirlpool reappeared. At that moment, Lang Wu's puppet realized the danger. It abandoned the white bone sword and hurriedly retreated. However, its movements were still a bit too slow. Yu Wuji was already ready to fight to the death. The blue light was invincible. Swish! This time, the blue light turned into a big blade with a brilliance of several tens of feet. Lang Wu's puppet didn't dodge at all and was directly cut in half by the blue light. Then, like Xing Fei's puppet, it directly turned into pieces. Immediately, it fell into the lake and disappeared. 2 of the 4 messengers died. Zhan Long's and Jin Feng's expressions suddenly changed. This was a situation that had never happened before. Although Zhan Long had already used a great technique, it was far from enough. At this point, Jin Feng couldn't help but sneer. 9 nether ant, how audacious! 8 trigrams absolute death, soul-cleansing land. As she said that, Jin Feng's black dress fluttered, endlessly tempting. The purple light that was originally controlled by her actually turned into purple mist in an instant. What Jin Feng used was actually an indiscriminate technique. Zhan Long wanted to seal the valley, while Jin Feng used the second soul-cleansing method. This place had become a different space. The other cultivators of the 9 underworlds did not even have the chance to wake up as they were in a daze. Sumo and Yi Kanxing had no way of resisting this. After killing Lang Wu, Yu Wuji's face was as pale as a piece of paper. He reluctantly withdrew the green light, and was then pulled onto the lotus throne by Sumo. The white lotus platform barely protected the 3 of them. However, the purple mist attacked, and the shadows were indistinct. There was actually an illusion within the purple mist. Sumo and the other 2 were a little dazed. At that moment, an old man in a white robe walked toward them slowly and shouted coldly, "Enough! Calm. Wonderful bookstore calm." Chapter 435. On the 8 trigrams lake, white as snow. However, the one in white was not an elegant young man, but a hunchbacked old man, a white camel. However, the aura he displayed was definitely extraordinary. At that moment, Zhan Long and Jin Feng, the 2 big puppets, cast a spell. It made the 8 trigram lake have a purple mist. Break world powers were crisscrossing. However, even so, White Camel still stooped and made the light 3 feet around him, directly covering Sumo, Yi Kanxing, and Yu Wuji. Sumo and the other 2 were instantly clear-headed. His face was slightly cold as he stared at Zhan Long and Jin Feng. At the same time, he made his move. It was a very simple action. He merely raised his hand and spread his fingers. However, White Camel's aura was extremely terrifying. His white robe exuded a faint milky white halo. Although he was hunched over, he still looked like a grandmaster. Between his 10 fingers, a faint white chi was emitted. It directly broke through the purple mist and went straight for Zhan Long and Jin Feng. The power of the sea annihilation. The White Camel's appearance startled Zhan Long and Jin Feng. Sea Destroyer, almighty being. How was this possible? Because it was absolutely against the rules of the 9 secluded secret realm. The 9 nether mystic realm did not allow cultivators above the undead realm to enter. Even if a 9 hell cultivator managed to break through to the god-burying realm in the secret realm, they would still be teleported out. In the Yizong world, the cultivators in the 2nd level were burying god, breaking world, exterminating sea, and being immortal. That White Camel had the power of the exterminating sea realm. Moreover, he was at the middle stage of the exterminating sea realm. How could he enter the 9 secluded mystery land? He had broken the rules of the mystic realm. This exceeded Zhan Long and Jin Feng's understanding. Outside the rules, they were a little lost. But at this moment, Zhan Long and Jin Feng utterly didn't have the chance to think too much. The White Camel's pressure had already locked them in midair above the 8 trigrams lake. Chi-chi, chi-chi. The white energy transformed into a sword, and it directly pierced through Zhan Long and Jin Feng's bodies. 2 of the 4 puppet emissaries had already been destroyed. The 2 of them were about to be buried at the bottom of the lake. However, they were the foundation of the ancient coin mystic realm. If all 4 of them were to be destroyed, then, the 8 trigrams lake would dry up and become a land of death. However, Zhan Long and Jin Feng's puppets were only at the middle stage of the break world. Facing the white camel, they had no power to resist at all. The 2 puppets had solemn expressions, but there was nothing they could do. A trapped beast in a cage was at his wits' end. At that moment, a whirlpool suddenly appeared in the 8 trigrams lake. The lake water transformed into a dragon and soared into the sky. In an instant, they formed a barrier that blocked before Zhan Long and Jin Feng. However, that was definitely not Zhan Long and Jin Feng's power. Chi. The white sword Chi released by White Camel directly hit the water curtain and instantly dissipated. The water curtain also fell into the lake with a splash. A draw. White Camel stopped and sneered. Looking again, the lake water was swirling, forming layers of whirlpools. Then, a young cultivator wearing azure clothes gradually emerged from the vortex. The young cultivator appeared to be only 23 or 24 years old. She had shoulder-length hair, a face as white as jade, eyebrows of 8 colors, eyes like bright stars, and a smile at the corner of her mouth. However, his figure was a little thin, and he looked a little frail. In his hand there was a folding fan. His entire person looked as gentle as jade, with a bit of unrestrained aura of a young master. As soon as this young cultivator appeared, Zhan Long and Jin Feng's puppets hurriedly knelt on one knee. "Young master." The young cultivator just smiled and nodded, not saying anything. Sumo looked at this cultivator in azure clothes and couldn't help but frown slightly. What realm was this? Even under his devil eye, the young cultivator was also a mortal. Faintly, he felt that this young cultivator's realm seemed to be higher than the old man in white. Ocean annihilation? Or eternity immortality? Sumo felt that everything in this ancient money-mystic realm was far beyond his imagination. Whether it was ocean annihilation or eternity immortality, those were not realms that Sumo could reach at present. Sumo even consciously moved the white lotus seat backward. Of course, that kind of movement was almost unnoticeable if one didn't deliberately observe it. In fact, Sumo still had a trump card, and that was to escape. However, he didn't want to abandon Yi Kansheng and Yu Wuji. If possible, he wanted to try activating the lotus seat to jump. In theory, he could already hide in the soul storage altar. Of course, that was his last resort. At present, Sumo was still watching. The young cultivator looked at the white camel with a smile, but he didn't speak immediately. Eternity clone? At this moment, the white camel's eyes slightly narrowed. He instinctively took a step back. At the same time, white lotus petals instantly appeared under his feet. Those white lotus petals were shaped like small boats, as white as jade. "You are from Gulian Star Field?" The young cultivator stepped on the lake and glanced at the lotus petals under the white camel's feet. A light flashed in his eyes, and then he smiled faintly. "Your Excellency has good eyesight." The white camel's mouth twitched and he sneered. "You have crossed the boundary?" The young cultivator gently patted his palm with his fan. The 4 major star fields of Chun Luo, Dongyi, Gulian, Baihe, and Necromancy, each has its own rules. We don't interfere with each other's business. You are a Gulian cultivator, why did you violate my boundary? Violate your boundary? The white camel shook his head and sneered. Actually, it's not that I, Gulian, is intruding, but your corpse-less sex hand has stretched too far. The young cultivator smiled. Why do you say so? Who are you? The white camel didn't answer the young cultivator's question, but asked a question instead. Corpse-less sect, Bu Si Yun. The young cultivator was still smiling. Corpse-less sect, unparalleled in the art of puppets. The white camel had already guessed it, and his eyes slightly narrowed again. But not everyone can be made into a puppet. The young cultivator Bu Si Yun shook his head. That's your opinion. And in my eyes, what do you think? The lotus petals under the white camel's feet began to move. In the infinite worlds there is no one who can't be a puppet. Bu Si Yun frowned, and his tone instantly turned sharp. At the same time, he made his move. Bu Si Yun flicked his hand, and the folding fan in his hand suddenly opened, and flew out while spinning. Eternity, immortality. That was the second stage of cultivation, the peak of the immortal realm. Its power was indescribable for Sumo and the others. At this moment, in the entire 8 trigrams lake area, only the white camel could barely withstand Bu Si Yun's pressure. The reason why he could withstand it was not because of his cultivation, but because of the white lotus petals under his feet. Lotus blossoming with each step, the white camel quickly retreated, and the white lotuses followed him like a shadow, or else he would have already fallen into the 8 trigrams lake. So powerful! The white camel was shocked. One must know that the young cultivator was only a clone. If his real body arrived, even with the white lotuses protecting him, he would most likely perish. The white camel quickly formed a hand seal. It was an extremely complicated hand seal, but in Sumo's eyes, it was somewhat familiar. Saint Lotus technique. Sumo's heart skipped a beat. This white-robed old man who suddenly appeared, could he be someone from the Saint Lotus? At that moment, Sumo thought of Li Beihan. In the void, the white camel directly summoned a white light. He wanted to block Bu Si Yun's fan. However, the corner of Bu Si Yun's mouth curled up, and his hand directly formed another technique. Bang! The white light of the white camel was directly dispersed. The fan was like a blade, directly sweeping towards the white camel's throat. Puff, blood splattered. Chapter 436. White Camel was at the middle stage of the sea annihilation realm. In fact, in the entire Pure Land, he was a top-notch existence. He didn't expect to meet a one-generation immortal realm cultivator in the 9 nether secret realm. Moreover, it was just a clone. Bu Si Yun of the Corpse-less sect. White Camel had never heard of this person, because the Corpse-less sect was too powerful and mysterious. Chen Luo's 4 major starfields were Dongi, Gulian, Baiha, and Dead Spirit. The Corpse-less sect originally only existed in Dongi Starfield, but now it had spread to other starfields. The so-called non-aggression of the Corpse-less sect was just a superficial statement. No one knew how powerful the Corpse-less sect was. However, it continued to expand, and it was unbridled and swift. Master Gulian had already sensed it. Li Beihan and White Camel's arrival was not without reason, because the Corpse-less sect was destroying the rules of the Izong world, and even posed a threat to other starfields. Moreover, the person they were going to cleanse today was the person White Camel had been ordered to protect. Therefore, White Camel had to fight even if he had to risk his life. However, he still underestimated Bu Si Yun's strength. The fan flew over. The immortal power was like a blade, breaking through all defenses. White Camel's technique could not stop it at all. The difference in levels was clear in just one move. In a split second, White Camel suddenly lowered his head. He dodged the fatal blow. That ancient fan didn't slash his throat, but it directly swept across his back. Because White Camel had a hunchback. His towering back was like a small mountain. Puff, the ancient fan was like a blade. In an instant, blood splattered, and a bloody mist spread. Sumo, Yi Kansheng, and Yu Wuji were all shocked. Bu Si Yun sneered. To him, this was just a small test. White Camel was no match for him. Chi, the sound of air being torn apart. After the ancient fan injured White Camel, it flew for dozens of zhang, made a turn in the void, and rushed towards White Camel again. At this moment, a bloody light flashed in White Camel's eyes. To be honest, ever since he reached the sea extermination realm, he had never been injured. Today, he had suffered a setback. He might even lose his life. White Camel clenched his teeth and looked at his camel-like back that had been kicked in half. Suddenly, a white brilliance shone out. The brilliance was extremely gentle and holy. Looking again, in an instant, white light spread out from the white camel's back. A pair of pure white wings instantly appeared. The wingspan was at least 3 zhang. The white camel stood up straight like an old angel. However, the pair of pure white wings seemed to be nurturing infinite vitality. Wing race. Bu Siyun's eyes narrowed. The ancient Lotus Wing clan was an extremely ancient immortal clan in Yizong world. However, this white-robed elder was definitely a relatively low-level existence in the Winged clan. The Sea Annihilation realm was really nothing. However, White Camel's wings fluttered, and in an instant, his whole body turned into a white light. His speed had actually increased by more than several times. Bu Siyun's fan brushed past by Camel's body without hurting him at all. However, White Camel did not attack, because he knew he had no chance of winning. This world originally belonged to the corpseless sect. In the opponent's world, and the opponent was a level higher than him, it would be lucky if he could survive. Therefore, White Camel dodged the flying fan and quickly retreated. He waved his hand and a mysterious light covered Sumo's lotus seat. Then, he shouted, "Follow me!" Sumo understood tacitly and quickly controlled the lotus seat. White Camel's wings could travel thousands of miles in an instant. At this moment, the white light he emitted was like a big net, carrying the white lotus seat to escape. Of course, he wanted to return to the place where he first entered the secret realm, and then use the rising sea talisman to escape the secret realm. This was also the last way for the 9 nether cultivators to leave the ancient money secret realm. However, White Camel seemed to have forgotten that the 9 nether secret realm was originally the soul cleansing ground of the corpseless sect. All the rules here were set by the corpseless sect. This space belonged to the corpseless sect. Therefore, seeing White Camel leading Sumo and the other 2 to retreat, Bu Siyun couldn't help but sneer. He put away his folding fan and looked at White Camel with a smile on his face. He didn't chase after them at all. Continue with the soul cleansing. Bu Siyun's voice was very soft, but it was unquestionable. Yes. Zhan Long and Jin Feng quickly nodded. Actually, the soul cleansing just now was still going on, because the purple mist hadn't dispersed yet. Now, the eyes of the netherworld cultivators beside the 8 trigrams lake were dull and gray. They were about to finish the soul cleansing and become the puppet cultivators of the corpseless sect, because their souls had already been completely cleansed. From now on, as long as the corpseless sect needed them, they would obey without any hesitation. Zhan Long and Jin Feng made hand seals at the same time. This technique was very special. They were finishing the last few steps of the soul cleansing. The purple mist above the 8 trigrams lake began to quickly gather, and the spiritual chi beside the lake began to pour into the surrounding cultivators. From this point of view, there was indeed a great fortune in the 9 nether secret realm. As long as these cultivators returned to the netherworld realm, they would advance by a small realm. Moreover, there would always be 2 or 3 cultivators at the peak of the undead realm who would advance to the deity-bearing realm. And in their memories, it was all thanks to the heavenly lake. As for the other memories that shouldn't have been there, they would be erased. Bu Siyun stepped on the waves of the lake with a smile on his face, calmly looking in the direction where the white camel disappeared. Because he was sure that the white camel and the others would come back soon. Sure enough, after a short while, a white light could be seen in the distance. It was the white camel with a white lotus throne. At this time, the white camel's expression suddenly changed. Just now, he was clearly fleeing in the direction he came from. But why did he come back? There was no problem with his direction. Ancient lotus-winged clan, this world is mine. How can you escape? Bu Siyun sneered. Then, he stretched out his hand. This time, he didn't take out his folding fan. Instead, he personally moved forward. However, his target wasn't the white camel, but the white lotus throne. At first, he didn't pay much attention to Sumo and the others. However, the fact that the white camel risked his life to save these 3 cultivators surprised him. Ancient lotus-winged clan cultivators, and a very special one at that. Why did they protect the 3 cultivators of the netherworld? Bu Siyun was puzzled. Therefore, he wanted to capture these 3 cultivators first. To him, this was as easy as blowing off dust. The immortal power instantly dispersed. The white camel couldn't stop it at all. He couldn't even run if he wanted to. Whoosh! Bu Siyun's hand was like the Buddha's palm, covering the sky. Sumo and Yi Kanshing wanted to take out the broken bamboo pole and the Mara star-studded whip respectively, but they couldn't do it due to the immortal power. Yuwuji wanted to take out the green light, but he couldn't. The 3 were at their wits' end. It seemed like they could only wait for death. However, at this critical moment, the lotus jade pendant on Sumo's body suddenly emitted thousands of white light. What followed was the voice of a male cultivator. Who dares to act rashly? That voice made Sumo's heart shake. Calm. Miao Shu Wu. Chapter 437. That voice, Sumo was very familiar with. Along with that voice, a figure burst out of the lotus jade pendant that Li Beihan had given him. It was a peerless man. His clothes were whiter than snow, his temperament was like a lotus, and his eyes were like water. A faint azure halo was emitted from the male cultivator's body, untainted by a speck of dust. There was also a strange heavenly eye between his eyebrows. However, the heavenly eye was slightly closed and did not open. It was a proud white lotus that bloomed in the 9 nether secret realm. Although it was only a strand of consciousness, the entire ancient coin secret realm was enveloped by the energy of the lotus. Li Shui. Sumo had recognized Li Shui's voice just now. However, this Li Shui was a bit different from what she remembered. The Li Shui in the past had an abundance of immortal aura, but lacked killing intent. However, this Li Shui in front of her, whether it was immortal aura or killing intent, far surpassed the Li Shui of the past. That aura was something that Sumo felt she couldn't reach. Sacred Lotus. Yi Kanshing and Yuwuji were both shocked, but at the same time they felt reassured. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that Sumo had a sacred lotus divine consciousness hidden in his body. Back then, after the Demon Sealing War, Li Shui left the 3 realms. Legend said that he went to the White Mountain Sea Realm. However, that was only a legend. Especially when Yi Kanshing saw Li Shui again. His heart was in turmoil. After all, they had fought together in the demon continent Azura world. Currently, it seemed that Li Shui's consciousness was enough to solve all problems. White Camel's eyes flashed with surprise. Before, he didn't know that young Master Li Beihan had given Sumo a sacred lotus consciousness. The sacred lotus was a venerable level existence in the Izong world. Whoosh, looking again, that Li water spirit sense waved a hand. His white robe fluttered, and endless power went towards Bu Siyun's hand. Boom, crack, the 2 forces collided. Waves surged in the 8 trigrams lake. In the surroundings, several mountains collapsed with a loud rumble. The entire ancient coin secret realm was shaking. Sumo and the others felt the world spinning. If it wasn't for the lotus seats, they would have been unable to stand. That was the absolute pinnacle level of confrontation. Even the aftermath could take the lives of Sumo and the other 2. When he looked again, Li Shui's long sleeve had dispersed Bu Siyun's hand. However, Bu Siyun's brows twitched, and his hand instantly formed again. Millennium Sage Lotus. It was clear that Bu Siyun recognized Li Water. At the very least, she knew of the existence of the 1,000 ancient sacred lotus. Even in the Izong world, the Holy Lotus was a well-known figure. The Saint Lotus of the ancient Lotus starfield was alarmed? Bu Si-yun was in disbelief. The corpseless sect's actions were not small, but in theory, it was not enough to alarm someone like Xing Lian. What was going on? The 9 nether soul cleansing ground wasn't something new, but why was it like this time? At that moment, Bu Si-yun could only stare at Sumo. What was the background of that black-clothed cultivator? Why does he have a Holy Lotus divine will on him? He always felt that there was something special about Sumo. However, he could not think of anything at the moment. Corpseless sect, you have gone too far. Who are you that you dare to touch? Li Shui's divine will sneered. You will pay the price. Then, Li Shui's divine will raised his hand again, and a white lotus vaguely formed in his palm. At the beginning, the lotus was white and flawless. However, as it bloomed, it gradually turned black. Furthermore, there were balls of black gas lingering around the lotus. Black lotus of destruction. Bu Si-yun could not help but suck in a breath of cold air, and her expression suddenly changed. This time, he knew he was in trouble. The black lotus of destruction was an indiscriminate samsara-level technique. Who could block the Holy Lotus celestial art? Even if his real body was here, it was useless. This secret realm could not be preserved. Escape! Bu Si-yun shouted. That shout was naturally for Zhan Long and Jin Feng. At this moment, they could not care about the soul cleansing ground. Plus, they had already finished cleansing their souls. Whoosh, whoosh! Bu Si-yun's clone, Zhan Long, and Jin Feng's puppet did not hesitate at all. Their bodies sank and they dove into the 8 trigrams lake. The entire 8 trigrams lake became a giant whirlpool. This 8 trigrams lake was a special existence. In some sense, it could even be considered a transportation formation. Bu Si-yun's group choosing to escape from here was the best choice. However, their opponent was the Holy Lotus Li Shui. Everything happened in an instant. Li Shui's divine will took out the Black Lotus. Want to run? Haha. Leave your life behind. The Black Lotus turned into a thick cloud and fell from the sky, straight into the 8 trigrams lake. Boom, crack, the earthquake. At this moment, even the netherworld cultivators outside the ancient coin's secret realm saw the water curtain of the realm tremble, as if it was about to shatter. Originally, some cultivators wanted to enter the ancient coin's secret realm to catch the tide, but they gave up on that idea. The cultivators outside felt that the ancient coin's secret realm was extremely unstable. Such a situation had never happened before. What was going on? All the cultivators outside the ancient coin's secret realm had a change of expression. At this moment, the 3rd and 2nd stage cultivators were preparing to retreat to where they came from. However, it was too late. Once the world-extinguishing Black Lotus entered the lake, it turned into black gas. Boom, whoosh! Black gas rose in all directions, spiritual energy exploded. At this moment, Sumo felt her mind shaking. It was a power that he had never seen in his memories of his past and present lives. It was a kind of great destruction. Sumo saw it clearly. The 8 trigrams lake instantly dried up. The dragon-spreading puppet and the phoenix puppet did not escape at all. They were directly enveloped by the Black Lotus Chi and turned into ashes in an instant. Li Shui really didn't need any effort to kill them. Sumo's mood was very complicated. What realm did Amu, Li Shui and the rest reach in the end? Did he actually need their protection now? Of course, this mood only lasted for a moment. At the same time, Sumo saw that half of Bu Si-yun's body was destroyed, but the remaining half still disappeared into the bottom of the 8 trigrams lake. And the bottom of the 8 trigrams lake was full of seals. Li Shui's divine sense raised his eyebrows. Bu Si-yun was able to escape with half her life from his world-extinguishing Black Lotus. She was indeed not bad. Corpseless sect. But Li Shui's lips curled as he muttered to himself, "We still have a lot of time in the future." At the same time, in the depths of an unknown spaces hall. A young cultivator dressed in green was sitting cross-legged. That was Bu Si Yun's real body. Whoosh, the void fluctuated. Half of Bu Si Yun's body that was heavily injured by the world-extinguishing Black Lotus appeared and then merged with the real body. Wah! Bu Si Yun suddenly opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of blood. This was the first time he was injured in his life. In an instant, his eyes flashed with a vicious look. Saint Lotus, we still have a lot of time in the future. Bu Si Yun wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.